Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, let's start the story of what if issei was the prodigy. Find me Timebreaker. Either, thousands of years ago, the Great War of Factions was one of the fiercest events provoked by the world's dominant factions. Heaven ruled by Almighty God and His angels. The twilight ruled by the fallen angels and the Nephilims. The underworld ruled by Satan and his demons. These factions were at war for thousands of years. To say that this struggle would be reduced to a conflict for power would undoubtedly minimize the full significance of that great war. Describing it like that couldn't be as simple as distinguishing day from night, male from female, young from old. It meant much more. For several years it was impossible to imagine that this would ever end, at least until one day some abominable dragons interfered with the fight. However, for the first time in thousands of years, something happened that caused the three great factions to cease their battle. As both factions suffered the devastating blow of those enemies of the world, two fearsome beings emerged from the hellish struggle as a result of the chaos, with total domination and power capable of shaking even the stars in the sky. Those fearsome beings were the celestial dragons, supernatural creatures that were the manifestation or incarnation of power. Even among their own race they were considered fearsome beings, without a master to serve or answer to, without beings to protect, without attachment or affection. Such beings were the symbol of pure destruction. It was no exaggeration to say that everything in their path turned to ashes and desert, as if death itself were with them side by side. At that the earth cried out for help. That cry was heard by the one who was their great creator and protector. And in response, God declared the dragons his enemies and ordered their execution. Two figures appeared before the throne of the Almighty, knelt in complete submission, and with great devotion accepted their Lord's command. On the right side, the one who held the unique power to make the impossible possible, the miracle man. On the left side, she who carried the great wrath of God to bring justice to the world, the Lady of Creation. The warriors who have kept the world protected from true evil were undoubtedly the most commendable candidates to eliminate the dragons that were causing chaos, especially since these beings were of sufficient skill to face such a threat. One more battle and another great victory. Oh, at least, just like I thought it would be, just like I thought it would be. But I was totally wrong. This battlefield where the whole sight was simply bleak. The pain, my reality was different from what my mind was trying to hide with that vision. W.Y. Despair, fear, and melancholy. My body was completely wounded, and my hands were soaked with your blood. I didn't even have the strength to stand or do anything for you, but the worst part was my broken spirit. My strength is leaving me. And no. Don't leave me. No. All this shouldn't have happened, things shouldn't have been this way. My body reacted desperately, seeking your warmth, as the only sign that everything had to be okay. I just wanted to hold you in my arms in those moments. Sorry. All this, it's my fault. I couldn't even say I'm sorry for what I said to you, and now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you sad again. Sorry for leaving you alone. Sniff P, please don't talk, don't tell me anything, I swear I'll save you. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear anything until we get out of here, you and I. Always together like we promised, please. My strength, don't abandon me now. Arms and legs. Move. Too, I love you too. The blood from his lips kept flowing and his eyes were slowly losing that light of life. Why is this happening to me? No, leave me. Now I only had one wish, one request that my heart cried out with all my desperation. But no matter how much I begged, what I wanted was not heard. The person I loved most in this world had died, and I can't do anything. My world fell apart at that moment, and I realized that all of this happened because of me. My eyes shed tears nonstop, and my heart shattered. A horrible guilt began to flood my soul like some kind of anchor, causing me to think a lot. Your body soon stopped emanating that precious light, that warmth that always sheltered me. Now it was taken over by the icy embrace of death. That day I just lost you, I lost everything. Part 01. And so 1,000 years passed until we found you again. A small meeting. Oh, a brochure? A girl in a rather strange costume comes up to me and wants to give me a brochure about something. But then, when I'm about to receive it, a strong wind blew and the leaflet flew through the sky. Yee! No, that's not good. He went away. When that strange girl appeared, she ran after the pamphlet that the wind carried away. Having been carried away by the wind, a piece of paper arrived at a place surrounded by nature, because at first glance you could see beautiful flowers and large trees that seemed to protect the place. A beautiful place within the city of Ke, which seemed to have been unoccupied for a long time due to how well maintained it was. The leaflet, decorated with a symbol in the center, began to slowly fall to the spot. But before it hit the ground, a mystical force was activated. The paper burned in the air, consumed by invisible flames until it vanished into dust. That land had rejected the presence of a demonic power. Something like this was not usual. At least in that city there had not been seen a place protected from the presence of demonic beings as this place was. It burned down, murmured the girl in the strange costume, who for some reason had made it there. The event left her perplexed. She didn't understand what she had just witnessed, and above all, what was this place? Her mistress had never told her about such a place in Ke. It doesn't look like a sacred shrine, and it's not a temple either, he said while cautiously inspecting the area. At first glance, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was just a natural space, beautiful, but ordinary. Still, his curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to venture a little deeper. But as he takes his third step, long, a voice boomed like thunder, chilling and authoritative. Thousands of years ago, I swore to protect this place. A promise born in those beautiful days, when I first discovered this world and I first discovered you, our special place. Despite the passage of time, it has remained the same as it was 15,000 years ago, since the day you found me, alone and broken. This place, which used to fill me with happiness, became my only refuge. The only corner where I wanted to stay in peace, sleeping eternally so as not to lose what little I had left. I thought sleeping forever would be the best thing. At least then no one would bother me anymore. Wham wham. A demon? A powerful voice emerged from the depths. In front of the strangely dressed girl, the world began to distort. The peaceful, natural vista shattered like glass, revealing everything to be a carefully woven illusion. From the center, a dazzling figure emerged. A young woman of heavenly beauty, with long, golden hair that fell like a lion's mane to her waist. Her skin was as white as the mountain snow, her face immaculate and serene, and her lips as soft as porcelain. But what stood out most was his expression, a calm so pure it was unsettling, like the silence before a storm. He wore a dark robe that covered his body from neck to toe, with a long black cloak that billowed in the wind. Ash-gray armor plates protected his neck, shoulders, chest, arms, and waist, each engraved with the symbol of an olive leaf, radiating a holy aura. Despite his fragile appearance, his mere presence commanded respect and fear. When her eyes opened, a pair of blue orbs, deep as the ocean floor, her serenity transformed into pure coldness. Magic being, he spoke in a firm voice. Why have you invaded my home? The strange girl fell to the ground, paralyzed with fear. She didn't say a word, just trembled. The young woman with golden hair looked at her silently. Then, she frowned calmly. Normally, I would have killed you for crossing my barrier. But the power that touched my sacred protection doesn't come from you. Are you a servant of a demon? The girl nodded shyly. The guard took a few steps closer. I stopped worrying about the demons that roamed this city a long time ago, but the power that touched my barrier is the power of destruction, unique to the Bale clan. His voice became colder, deeper. I can't let that go. Then, as if pronouncing a sentence, he declared, take this message to your master: no demon with the power of destruction is welcome in my dwelling. Should they set foot in my domain again, I will take the head of the heir of the Bale clan, and I will exterminate all his descendants of this generation so that they will never forget whom they have offended. It wasn't a threat, it was a decree, a direct provocation. Challenging the Bale clan, the clan of the great king of the underworld, was madness. But the unearthly young woman didn't waver. Her every word was as firm as stone and as deadly as a sword. Terrified, the demonic maid just nodded and fled, without even looking back. The blue-eyed girl watched her leave. Then, expressionless, she turned around. My barrier has begun to weaken. All these years of sleep have worn down its power. For something so weak to disturb it, sigh. Before I go back to sleep, I'll restore it. Just a few hours and the silence will return. Either. The dream of every boy my age is undoubtedly to live a good youth with a beautiful girl. To be honest, I thought that would never happen to me. I always felt like a spectator, not the protagonist of a story. I, Hayato Issei, never imagined that today would be the best day of my life. I don't think this can get any better, I thought, grinning like a fool as I scratched my head. I had just had a date, my first date, and not with just anyone, but with a beautiful girl who, to top it all off, declared her love to me. Her name is Yumikan. A girl with long dark hair and a smile that seemed like something out of a dream. This was definitely a lot of fun, Isikan, she said sweetly. I honestly enjoyed being with you. Me too, I loved spending the day by your side, I replied awkwardly, feeling my heart beating like a drum. It was impossible to hide my excitement. My whole body screamed happiness. The memories of this date kept replaying in my head like a romantic movie. Every moment felt magical. It was as if I was living one of those stories I'd only read in manga or seen in anime. Now we were in a park alone. This atmosphere was undoubtedly the perfect ending to our first date, and possibly the long-awaited first kiss. I'm nervous, you know, Isikan? Do you think you can listen to my request? I knew it, I'm about to get my first kiss. Come on, don't be silly and don't get carried away so quickly. Don't let your desires dominate you so easily. I'm internally celebrating like an idiot, but seeing that they started moving their lips, could you die for me? Could you die for me? All my joy vanished suddenly. Only confusion remained. What had I just said? Could you repeat that again? I don't think I heard you correctly. Could you die for me? She said it without hesitation. Her smile remained intact, a sweet expression that contrasted with the madness that had just escaped her pink lips. A thick silence fell between us. Then he started laughing. A soft laugh at first, but laced with a disturbing malice, as if he wanted to put an end to everything we'd experienced together that day. It was fun, she replied with a look and smile that showed a lot of malice. And then, the impossible happened. 2 dark wings sprouted from his back, a powerful flapping that tore through the air. They were real. Absolutely real. Yumikan always seemed so cute to me, so angelic, but this was definitely not a good thing. Absolutely, this was not good for me at all. You had fun, didn't you? But the charade is over. Now I have to kill you. Her sweet face twisted into a mask of cruelty. The clothes she wore were ripped away, replaced by a revealing, dark garment more befitting a demon than a woman. A black top barely covered her chest. Her arms, wrapped in long black gloves with dangling chains, trembled slightly from the power she emanated. A pauldron with 3 enormous spikes adorned her right shoulder. Her high-heeled boots reached her thighs, reinforcing her intimidating presence. It took my breath away. Bye-bye. A spear of light emerged from his hands and he threw it towards me. The explosion shook the ground. Smoke filled the air, revealing a cracked crater where he had been standing. Silence, and then a gasp. A face bathed in sweat, eyes wide with terror. I, Hayato Issei, lay on the ground, my legs trembling on the verge of collapse. Ha! The black-winged girl laughed with cruel glee. Her amusement was my despair. This was fun for her. This is too funny, she said, covering her face with one hand as she looked up at the sky. That scary face, it's delicious. He turned his gaze on me. His smile was as sharp as a razor. With that insane explanation, the girl with black wings looked back at the brown-haired boy, who now had a pale and very scared face. Crossing her arms in a clear sign of superiority, that girl looks at me. Did fear leave you speechless, Isikan? What a shame. A quick death would be a waste. I'm in a good mood, so I'll give you 5 minutes. Run. Flee. Try to survive. And so the hunt began. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. This has to be a nightmare, a horrible nightmare. What just happened? My legs ran before my brain could command them. I went deeper into the woods beyond the park where we'd been. I didn't recognize the terrain. I didn't know where I was, or how to get out, but that didn't matter to me. All I want is to run away, run as far away as possible from that murderous figure. Issei Kayakin. Where are you? That voice was no longer Yuma's. That once sweet voice was now a hellish chant. I hid behind a tree, my heart pounding in my chest like a runaway drum. My breathing was the only thing I could hear. Why, Yumikan, why? I didn't understand anything. None of this made any sense. I reflexively brought my hand to my chest. The pain wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from within. From a fear so pure I could barely hold on. I found you. The cat and mouse game was over. A new spear of light exploded against the tree he had been sheltering behind. The impact threw the brown-haired boy's body into the air along with the wooden debris. Arg! Pain ripped through my body. I had survived, but barely. The body of that brown-haired boy was trying to recover, but he didn't even have the strength to stand. He tried to get up from the floor with all his strength. How pathetic, said a voice from the sky. Rainier descended slowly, letting her presence loom like a dark shadow. His smile was poisonous. With some pain and coughing, that boy called Issei looks at her and begins to speak to her weakly. Why Yuma-can, why? To begin with, my name isn't Yuma, she replied disdainfully. My name is Rainera, and I am a fallen angel in service to Aziz Elsama, governor of Grigori. A fallen angel? Issei exclaimed in shock. Oh, you poor fool, he laughed disdainfully. My mission was to eliminate you. Apparently, someone thought you were a threat because you wielded a powerful sacred gear. But seeing you, I realized it was a ridiculous exaggeration. You're just a pathetic human. Issei's gaze didn't seem to change. On the contrary, every word that came out of that girl who was falsely known as Yuma-chan simply left him more shocked. The pain faded into the background. Issei simply couldn't believe everything that came out of the mouth of the one who had started treating him horribly. I wanted to play with you a little more, but you've lost your grace. Humans always so fragile, Rainier whispered as she conjured another spear of light. There was no more compassion in his gaze. Only the intent to kill. Although at that moment everything seemed lost. With his last efforts and trying to hold on to his short life, Issei's gaze instinctively turned to the heavens for help. In the midst of despair, he perhaps did something he never thought he would do. Perhaps because death was so close was what caused his hands to cross. Closing his eyes in the few seconds of life, that brown-haired boy simply prayed. I know you probably won't hear me because I've never done this, but God, I don't want to die. Not yet. If you really exist, please, help me. Rainier threw the spear. It was the end. The seconds that had passed were brief. That spear of light was about to come against Issei to take his life. Only two paths remained: to die pierced by the light of a fallen angel, or be saved by a miracle. That night that was thought to be the end of that brown-haired boy named Hayato Issei was undoubtedly the end, yes. But he didn't give his life over to death, rather. It was the end of what he knew as a normal life, because that night something completely new was about to begin. As his body shook, as his heart pounded to the brink of collapse, only one thing kept him standing: hope. He clung to her, like someone who clings to the last breath before falling. To that little bit of faith that maybe everything would be okay. Surely that would be more than enough to make your prayer come true. A spark. A whisper. A heartfelt prayer. Because if his life was going to be taken by a black-winged being, I won't allow it. That night his life was going to be saved by a beautiful pair of white wings. Either. Part 02. The bearer of creation, an angel named Chai. Moments before. I think I've lived this way too long. Although, to be honest, I had no other choice after everything that happened. I don't deserve more than this. I've cried and mourned for 1,000 years. But now I simply have nothing left. Not even the desire to continue. I just want to stay here forever. Our special place, the golden-haired girl whispered, her gaze lost in the horizon, filled with nostalgia. This is where I met you 15,000 years ago. And yet, despite everything, this was the only place I managed to protect without time or war destroying it. An eternal meadow, covered with flowers that have bloomed for millennia. Trees with fruits that no longer exist anywhere else in the world. Ancient creatures that have somehow survived the passage of time. Everything remains the same as before. Well, almost everything. I'm almost done with the barrier. Just a little bit more and I can sleep for another 500 years. I'm just missing you. But I already understood that, in this life, we will not see each other again. I can only find you in my dreams. There isn't a single day that goes by that I don't think of you, that I don't miss you, Issei, she whispered as the breeze caressed her face and the petals floated around her as if time itself were protecting her. In front of her, a large crystalline structure, the heart of the barrier, began to close once more. Hundreds of lines of light wound through the ground like sacred roots, forming an ancient sealing pattern. I was about to go back to sleep for 500 years, but then, a chill ran down her spine. A discordant, alien, desecrating aura brushed against her sanctuary like an unwanted shadow. His normally serene eyes turned cold. What is this? A vile presence, disguised as light. After so much time, does anyone dare to step foot in this sacred place? The strongest took a step back. The pattern of light on the ground stopped. The barrier couldn't close completely. Her gaze changed, no longer that of a resigned woman, but that of a warrior. I won't let them touch what's left of me. I'll never let them. Her white wings slowly emerged. Though not as brilliant as in ancient times, they still radiated a purity that was impossible to corrupt. Her silhouette was wrapped in her dark cloak, but her aura shone like the sun. The wind parted before her, and the birds of the forest fled from the coming conflict. The presence felt closer. The black-winged woman looked on in shock as she noticed her spear of light was stopped. She had arrived. A powerful angel with beautiful white wings appeared, standing between her and the boy named Hayato Issei. As if it were a miracle, that beautiful girl appeared in front of Issei in an instant, stopping the spear with her bare hands. The cursed light sparked between her fingers, but she didn't flinch. A burst of air exploded between them. Rainier froze. What? Who are you? The woman in front of her slowly looked up, ocean blue eyes, wet with pain, but boiling with fury. Why do you want to kill him? Rainier frowned and gave a mocking smile. What's it to you, angel? This is my business. You shouldn't get involved in. Crack! The white-winged angel's fist slammed into Rainier's stomach with brutal, crushing force, so fast she couldn't even react. Rainier doubled over, spitting blood. The air was knocked out of her lungs, and her wings spasmed. Her opponent said nothing. She just held her hair with one hand, forcing her to look into her eyes. I realize you don't know what you're doing. Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but from anger. That boy, that human you were going to kill, is the love of my life. Rainier struggled, trying to break free, but she couldn't even move her arms. I've waited 1,000 years for him. I've cried in my dreams to see him one more time. I won't let some black-winged bitch take him away from me. And without another sound, he hurled her with brutal violence toward the forest. Rainier flew like a rag in a storm, crashing into the trees. Trunks creaked and split under the impact, while sacred dust filled the air like a white storm. Rainier staggered to her feet, spitting blood. Her body was shaking. "Tch, who the hell are you?" He attempted to form another spear of light. He took to the sky with a shout, channeling all the power he had left. But it wasn't enough. The golden-haired angel appeared before her in a blink of an eye. Rainier tried to attack, but was blocked with a single hand. Every blow, every desperate attempt, was neutralized with terrifying ease. The strongest angel didn't speak. He just looked at her, and in those eyes, Rainier saw something she had never felt before. Something more than power. He saw love turned into fury. Rainier, on her knees, gasped. Her body was shaking, shattered, but her tongue was still spitting venom. I didn't want to kill him, I was forced, Rainier growled with a trembling voice. The beautiful, golden-haired angel, still standing, gazed at her silently. Her sacred figure glowed in the holy wind that surrounded her, but her face was a mask of ice. Forced? She repeated in a low voice. Yes, my superiors, they fear his sacred gear. The boosted gear. He carries it in his left arm. They want it destroyed before he fully awakens. The white-winged angel frowned, still saying nothing. That sacred gear contains the soul of one of the most fearsome dragons, the Red Dragon Emperor Drake. The name fell like thunder on his heart. That caused the strongest angel to take a step back, as if the world had trembled beneath his feet. Her eyes opened with a shudder of horror. What did you say? Rainier noticed. He smiled. Yes, Drake. The one sleeping inside that boy is the Red Emperor. You don't know what's at stake, stupid angel. When that dragon awakens, it will consume him. He'll become a threat to everyone. But the loudest one didn't hear her. Not really. Her lips trembled. Drake, the same name, same damn name, Issei's killer. The one who thousands of years ago, blinded by power, had destroyed the human she loved, leaving a broken soul. No, it can't be, the long-haired angel whispered, touching his chest. Drake is inside Issei? Rainier nodded, crawling back with a crooked smile. That's why I must kill him now. Before it's too late. The strongest angel was shocked. She fell to her knees for a second, shaken by the revelation. The same being that had condemned her to eternal pain now lived inside the man she had waited so long for. A cruel mockery of fate. His soul screamed in anguish. But just as he let his guard down, he noticed a subtle pressure. A slight change in the air. Rainier's eyes blazed with murderous intent. Her trembling arm secretly formed a new spear of light. Die! He threw himself at her with all the hatred left in his body, but she was no longer the same as she had been 1,000 years ago. Silly! He twisted his body with lethal elegance. His fist slammed into Rainer's face with the force of a storm. A dry crack resonated in the air. Rainer's nose was instantly broken. Blood sprayed into the air like a crimson bloom, and her body was propelled backward, bouncing across the ground like an out-of-control doll. Aggh! Rainer lay there, unable to move, her face distorted by pain. Her opponent watched her without compassion. Trying to attack while someone else is talking, it's not just cowardly. It's stupid. He advanced slowly toward her, white fire coming out of his back like fiery wings. You don't understand anything, you stupid fool. That dragon may live inside Issei, but I'm here too. I am Chai, the strongest angel in the world. Chai took a firm step toward her, the aura of his power crackling like a contained white storm. Listen to me carefully, he said in a low voice, sharp as a sacred blade. If you come near him again, if I feel your disgusting trail near me again. His gaze flashed with a threat older than time. I'll kill you. Rainer, trembling, could barely stand. She wiped the blood from her mouth and spat it out to the side. You damn crazy woman! You don't know what you're getting into! He screamed, backing away like a defeated shadow. You and that brat are going to regret this. Everyone will. And with a cowardly screech, it flapped its tattered wings and disappeared into the smoke-stained skies, leaving behind only curses and dust. Silence returned to the forest. The wind ceased, as if even nature held its breath. Chai turned around, running towards Issei, who was lying unconscious on the ground, pale and weak. She knelt beside him, her eyes filled with desperate fear. She placed her hands on his chest and closed her eyes, summoning her holy light. A warm glow sprang from her palms, enveloping Issei like a cloak of purity. The wounds on his body began to heal. His weak heartbeats slowly stabilized, but he didn't wake up. He's still asleep, Chai whispered. Tenderly, she picked him up and, with delicate movements, placed him on her lap. She stroked him with trembling fingers, as if she feared it was all just a dream. Her hair, his face, his breathing, he was there. Chai's tears continued to fall silently, as her trembling hands caressed Issei's face. You haven't changed at all, she whispered, barely a breath. You're still you even though you're in this air, and now I can still feel it, you're my Issei. The wind blew gently through the broken trees, like a whisper of time reopening old wounds. She closed her eyes, burying her face in his hair, inhaling the scent she thought was lost forever. But this, she murmured, holding him closer to her chest. This can't just be a miracle. He slowly raised his gaze to the overcast sky, and for the first time in centuries, his blazing blue eyes filled with a sacred rancor. His lips trembled as a bitter truth flowed from his mouth like poison. This isn't a gift, this is a punishment. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning pale from the pressure. A punishment for what happened 1,000 years ago, for what I did, for what I allowed to happen. Her broken voice turned into a lament. The tears grew more intense. Her whole body trembled. And now 1,000 years later, the soul of that cursed dragon is within him. The same power that killed you is now a part of you. She leaned her forehead against Issei's, her heart breaking. What kind of joke is this? Silence answered him cruelly. Why, my God? He asked in a whisper. She then stroked Issei's hair with infinite tenderness, as if she was afraid he would disappear again if she blinked. It doesn't matter, she said with a broken sigh. It doesn't matter if he gave it to me as punishment. If this is the price for touching him again, I'll pay it 1,000 times more. Her lips curved into a broken smile, as a last tear slid down her cheek. The sky was beginning to turn a blue-gray. The first rays of dawn caressed the trees, and between them, Issei's body lay reclined on a makeshift bed of clean branches and soft leaves. His breathing was calm, with no trace of the previous night's pain. Chai stood several feet away, in the shadows of the forest, silently observing him. There were no traces of his presence, no scent, no spiritual imprint. Only the echo of an invisible, broken presence. He pressed his lips together, resisting the urge to move closer. He'll wake up soon, she murmured to herself. And just as he predicted, Issei opened his eyes, confused. He sat up slowly, his hair disheveled and his eyes half closed. Where am I? He looked around, disoriented, and then brought his hand to his head. He didn't remember what had happened. Nothing. Just a warm feeling in his chest as if something or someone had hugged him in the dark. My house! He jumped up, alarmed. My parents are going to kill me! He ran off, tripping over roots, muttering excuses he would rehearse. The scene was almost comical if it weren't for the deathly silence with which Chai watched him leave, her heart breaking. Forgive me, issei, she whispered, her voice choked. He brought a hand to his chest, still feeling the weight of the seal he placed during the night, a white light that had delicately enclosed the soul of the sleeping dragon within the sacred gear. I was able to contain Drake for now. But that seal won't last long. I can't risk him waking up not without first finding a way to remove it without you dying as a result. She looked up at the sky, letting the wind gently lift her cloak. I never realized you were so close. You lived your whole life just miles away from me. And I buried in my pain, blind, unable to feel it. Her gaze became distant, determined, but also full of sadness. If heaven allowed you to be reborn with that power, there must be a reason. And if there are answers, they have them. He remained silent. Miguel Gabriel, my brothers. Just thinking about it made him grit his teeth. They hadn't spoken in 1,000 years, since the incident at the end of the world. I don't know if they'll want to talk to me after I abandon them, but I can't ignore it anymore. I have to know why Drake came back. Why you're here. Her white wings, hidden until then, spread gently with a whisper of wind. Wait for me, issei. I won't run away this time. This time I'll make sure no one takes your life. And with a flash of white like dawn, Chai rose towards the horizon. The hiding place was in the cellars of a forgotten church, covered in dust and damp. That once sacred place was now a desecrated lair. Shadows lengthened along the walls, where inverted crosses hung between black candles. On a stone table, Rainier writhed in pain. Her face was covered in dried blood, her nose visibly fractured, and a purple bruise marked her stomach. Her screams of rage echoed loudly in the room. That damn bitch! Who the hell was she? He spat between gasps. She wasn't just an angel, Calawarna. She wasn't. Calawarna watched her coldly, arms crossed, as Donasek cleaned a broken spear. Appearance? Donasek asked. Rainier closed her eyes in fury. She could still feel the impact of the blow to her stomach. She was dressed like a nun in dark robes and armor, but not just any nun. Her presence, her gaze, she trembled for a moment. It was as if divine wrath itself had been incarnated before me. Middle laughed from atop a broken column. You look great with your broken nose, by the way. Shut up, Middle. Rainier snarled, summoning a sphere of darkness into her hand, which she angrily dispelled. At that moment, a timid voice rose. Please don't move too much. I'm trying to close the wound. The one who said that was Asia Argento, the petite nun with blonde hair and green eyes, kneeling beside the altar. Her expression serious, she channeled her healing power with trembling hands, while a green light coursed through Rainier's body. Rainier looked at her with disdain, although she faked a smile. You're too delicate for this world, Asia. Asia looked down, a little confused. Sorry. I just want to help. Rainier clicked her tongue impatiently. Talk less, heal more. Asia nodded nervously and concentrated, not noticing Rainier's eyes analyzing her closely, like a snake watching a mouse. Suddenly, Rainier sat up abruptly, causing Asia to step back. Calawarna, she said with a crooked smile. Do you realize? This little girl can go where we can't. She has the face of an angel, a pure heart, everyone trusts her. Donasek rubbed his chin, getting the idea. Are you thinking of using it? Oh, of course. Rainier turned to Asia and lifted her chin with a blood-stained finger. You'd like to have friends, wouldn't you? Good people who'd accept you. Asia swallowed. Yais. Rainier smiled, but her voice turned sharp as ice. So, listen carefully, little one. There's a very special boy I want you to meet. He's important, and he needs someone like you. Calawarna raised an eyebrow. And then what will you do? Once I trust her, we'll use it. Rainier narrowed her eyes with a cruel smile. She'll tell us everything about that gear, and if that angel shows up again, this time I won't be distracted by sentimental speeches. I'll destroy her. Asia didn't understand anything. She only felt a chill when Rainier lay back down, disdainfully demanding, keep healing. And make no mistake, you're not special. Just useful. The air in the former occult club lounge was thick, almost electric. The red curtains moved lightly in the breeze, while the soft ticking of the clock seemed slower than usual. Rias Gremory sat in her usual chair, one leg crossed, her gaze fixed on the creature in front of her. Her familiar, with its elegant demonic appearance, hovered nervously in the air, still trembling from what she had witnessed. "Can you repeat that?" Rias asked, her voice soft but icy. "Yais, my lady," the familiar gulped. "When I went looking for the pamphlet I lost, I ended up in the forest west of the city. But something was wrong there, the space itself seemed like another world. When I found the pamphlet, something tore it to pieces." Rias narrowed her eyes, and then, a being appeared. "No, an angel. But not like the ones we've encountered before. Her presence was different. She wore no halo, but her power was sacred, pure, and devastating. A beautiful woman dressed like a nun in dark robes and golden armor, but with black and silver armor. Her gaze was like that of death." Off to the side, Aquino frowned. Her fingers intertwined, restless. "What did that figure say?" The relative swallowed again and repeated the words exactly, as if his wings were still trembling. "No demon with the power of destruction is welcome in my dwelling. Should they set foot in my domain again, I will take the head of the heir of the Bale clan, and exterminate all of his descendants of this generation so that they will never forget whom they have offended." A deathly silence took over the room. The fire in the fireplace crackled softly, but no one spoke for several long seconds. Kiba clenched his fists in the shadows, while Kaneko opened her eyes in surprise. Aquino was the first to break the silence. "That threat isn't a simple warning. Take the head of the Bale heir? Do you know what that means?" Rias didn't respond immediately. Her face remained impassive, but her eyes moved with pinpoint precision, processing the information. "Of course he knows," he said finally. "It's a direct declaration of war against the Bale bloodline and, by extension, my house. Against the power of destruction. What are we going to do?" Aquino insisted, this time with some tension in her voice. Rias stood gracefully. She turned her back on her companions and walked to the window, where the sunset light dyed everything red. Her crimson hair swayed slowly in the breeze. "If that threat is real, if an angel with that level of power really exists, then we shouldn't act so rashly." "But you said so," Aquino added. "No one in this era can stand against the Bale clan. Let alone Sir Zexama." "I know," Rias interrupted, without turning around. "And that's precisely why this is troubling. No angel should have the power to speak to a noble house like that, let alone the courage to threaten those of the Bale clan. This isn't a random provocation. It's personal. Calculated." Rias turned slowly, her gaze firm, cold, and beautiful like a diamond. "Before deciding what action to take, we'll investigate. We can't afford to make mistakes, not while something like that is moving in the shadows." Kiba took a step forward, his expression serious. "Let me go investigate the forest, Riasama. If that figure is still there, I can track him down or at least gather some useful information." The familiar, still floating in the air, flapped its wings nervously. "No!" he exclaimed. "You shouldn't. That place is no longer part of this world. Or at least not entirely. It's protected by a barrier, a veil of sacred power. It's as if that land has been removed from time." Kiba frowned, but didn't insist. Rias sighed softly and returned to the center of the room. Her gaze rested for a few seconds on the old map hanging on the wall. "If we can't even get close without risking being purified, then that site can't be explored like any other. So what do we do?" Kaneko asked, still frowning. Rias crossed her arms, her voice now more thoughtful. "My family has resided in this region for centuries. And I've never, ever heard of that forest. No records, no seals, no rumors. Which means only one thing." Aquino tilted her head. "What's older than the Gremory bloodline, or that he was purposely erased from history?" Rias added. "In any case, if we want answers, we'll have to look further back. Much further back than our own generations." He turned to Kiba and the others. "I need you to gather everything you can about the origins of this city and its sacred lands. Search ancient libraries, church records, even the tales of long-lived human families. Anything that speaks of forbidden territories, of angels without halos." The relative trembled once more. "And if you'll allow me, I'll stay at the club, far away from that place. I don't want to feel that judgment on me again." Rias nodded. "Do it. But if you remember anything else, don't hide it." He then turned back to the window. The sky was gradually darkening, as if the storm had finally begun to reach the land. Either. Part 03 The Return Home. Chai's feet floated on the surface of the water of a silent lake, deep in a mountain forgotten by humanity. Ahead, a luminous crack opened the sky like a silent wound, the threshold to the first heaven. Her white wings spread solemnly, enormous, pure, yet marked by time and exile. Her face was serene, but her eyes shone with a restrained fire. There was no fear. Only need. 1,000 years, he whispered. And yet, the sky remains just as far away. With a slight movement of her hand, the veil of the sky parted, allowing her passage. The glow enveloped her. First heaven, the gates. A golden field stretched to the horizon, pierced by columns of light that rose like swords stuck in the earth. The gates of heaven, resplendent and covered with living hymns, rose before her, untouched. And yet, they no longer recognized her. 2 angels descended swiftly, their spears crossing in front of the entrance. Stop! This place is reserved for the hosts of the Almighty. You have no halo, nor any heavenly mark. Chai looked at them calmly, but his voice was full of calm and serenity. He simply said, "There is no need to raise your spears against me, for my desire is not to fight, but to talk." The angels stared at each other tensely. One of them tightened his grip on the hilt of his spear. "Chat? Who do you want to talk to?" Chai looked at them and said his brother's name. "I want to speak with the leader of the angels, Michael." The angels didn't respond immediately. The wind between the columns of light seemed to whisper an ancient, forgotten name. One of the guardians narrowed his eyes. "Miguel doesn't receive audiences on a whim. Especially not from someone who isn't registered as part of the current forces. Your presence here is irregular." Chai lowered his gaze for a moment. A shadow of sadness crossed his ocean blue eyes, but it wasn't weakness. It was the memory of centuries of exile and silence. "I know I have no record of it because I decided to leave heaven myself. I have no right to make these kinds of requests, but I really need to see Michael. I'm not his enemy, I'm an angel, too." The angel, still holding his spear firmly, hesitated. Something in his voice, his bearing, his imperturbable calm, dispelled his doubts. "Sorry, we can't let you in." Chai looked him straight in the eyes, without hatred or pleading, only with a calm firmness that was more powerful than any scream. "Then I'll have to do it by force." The sacred air trembled. An ancient hum, like the echo of trumpets yet unblown, rippled across the golden field. The 2 guardian angels stepped back, surprised, as a circle of light beneath Chai's feet activated. It wasn't magic or heresy, it was a power heaven hadn't witnessed in millennia. It was an unauthorized key, but a legitimate one. "What are you doing?" one of them shouted. "By causing a scene," Chai replied, calmly lowering her hand. "It's the only way to be heard here." An explosion of white light surrounded her. In an instant, her body was propelled skyward, dodging the spears of light the guardians fired. She pierced the golden clouds of the first heaven, crossing the heavenly gates, while in her wake the sacred alarms rose, invisible trumpets announcing an unrecorded eruption. The entire heavens went on alert. Meanwhile, Chai dodged the attacks without striking back. Every angel who tried to intercept her was deflected, dodged, enveloped in her aura without being harmed. There was no hatred in her movements, only urgency and determination. When he reached the second heaven, the celestial city, the light was denser, purer. But it wasn't welcome. Before her, a majestic figure descended, wrapped in a silver robe, with wings that seemed made of crystal and sky. It was Gabriel who had arrived. "Stop!" His voice resonated with unwavering force. "You will not take another step. I am Gabriel, the strongest angel in heaven. I am sorry you have chosen this path." Chai stopped, floating gently. Her veil covered part of her face, but the smile she offered pierced the silence. "You are strong, Gabriel." Gabriel narrowed his eyes. Something about that voice, that way of speaking, made him hesitate. But he couldn't risk it. "Get ready!" The first shock shook the second heaven. The angels watching from the city crowded into the nearby heavens, suspended, open-mouthed. "Is Gabriel fighting seriously? We haven't seen her unleash her power like this in years. Who is this intruder who forces her to fight like this, and who has not yet been defeated?" Chai didn't counterattack. She just blocked, deflected, and danced between attacks like the wind through trees. And although Gabriel attacked with precision, something inside her began to waver. Every time her eyes met those of the intruder, she felt a strange familiarity, as if she had once loved that presence. Finally, after a clash of energies that shook the foundations of heaven, the two separated. "Why don't you fight with all your might?" Gabriel shouted. Chai danced between Gabriel's attacks, not violently, but with the delicacy of someone who knew her sister's rhythm better than her own. Each stroke of light, each slash of Gabriel's sacred sword, was met with soft steps, circular movements, and barely perceptible deflections. He didn't counterattack, he didn't raise his hand. He just dodged. He just retreated. "Why aren't you fighting?" Gabriel gasped, spinning at full speed, unleashing a wave of energy that tore through the air. "Who are you? What do you want?" But there was no response. Just a look, serene, steady. The angels watching from a distance no longer knew what to think. Is he holding back? Avoiding combat? Gabriel is attacking with everything and that woman isn't even responding. Gabriel hesitated for a moment. His heart pounded with a mixture of fury and confusion. She felt her rival was strong as her, or perhaps stronger. But then, why didn't she respond with equal intensity? It was then that, in a quick turn, Gabriel launched a downward slash. It wasn't lethal. It was a warning, a call to action, but what he got was something very different. The blade of light grazed Chai's face, leaving a thin cut across her cheek. At the same time, the veil covering her face was ripped away, slowly falling into the void like a feather. Everything stopped. Chai's face was exposed to the sacred air of heaven. Her ocean blue eyes, her serene expression, that pure, familiar, unreal beauty. The air in the second heaven was still. Gabriel's sword fell with a thud. The veil crumbled between his fingers. And then he saw it, that face. The same one he remembered from his dreams. The same one who had cried so many nights while looking at the empty sky. The face of her older sister. "It can't be," he said in a trembling voice. "Is that you?" A murmur ran through the angels surrounding them. "They're identical. She's just as beautiful as Gabrielsima." But Gabriel didn't hear anything. He took a step. Then another. And then, no longer holding back, he ran to Chai and hugged her tightly, as if he were afraid she would disappear. "Sister," he sobbed, clinging to her. "I thought I'd lost you forever." Chai stiffened. She could feel the warmth and fragility of Gabriel's embrace. That embrace she herself had longed for centuries. But he didn't return it. His hand stopped halfway and then fell. "Gabriel," she murmured with broken sweetness. "You shouldn't hug me." Gabriel pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "Why do you say that?" "Because I don't deserve it," Chai replied with bitter serenity. "I made you cry. I abandoned you. I turned away from heaven and left you alone. I was your older sister, but I didn't fulfill my duty as such." Gabriel shook his head, tears falling freely down his cheeks. "You always blamed yourself for what happened 1,000 years ago. Miguel and I failed you by not being able to protect that beautiful heart of yours. I didn't want to cause you any trouble." Gabriel then noticed the wound on Chai's face, barely a cut, but visible as a little blood covered her delicate skin. He raised a trembling hand and touched it with extreme care. "Did I do this to you?" Chai nodded slightly. "A minor wound. You have nothing to worry about. You're a great warrior now. I'm proud to see you so strong." "No!" Gabriel pressed her lips together, choked with guilt. "I don't care about strength. I care that you're here and that you won't leave again." "I can't promise you that," Chai replied in a soft but firm voice, like a breeze that caresses and hurts at the same time. "No!" Gabriel hugged her even tighter. "Please don't leave again. After 1,000 years, I can finally see you, but now you." Her voice cracked, torn between relief and fear. Gabriel's wings trembled behind her, spread out like a useless shield against the accumulated pain. Chai closed his eyes. For a moment, the sky seemed silent, as if the firmament itself were holding its breath. And then, very slowly, his arms rose, and he returned the hug. Tight. Silent. Filled with tears that didn't fall, but hurt my soul. "I'm sorry," Chai whispered, clinging to her sister's warmth. "I'm sorry for everything." Gabriel didn't respond with words. He just buried his face in his sister's neck, as if he still couldn't believe she was there. But then, a sudden shudder ran through the second heaven. The light grew clearer, more solemn. As if the firmament itself acknowledged a greater presence. The angel's wings folded in reverence, and the hymns fell silent. Everyone knew what it meant. Michael had arrived. The leader of the angels descended, wrapped in his golden cloak. His sword rested on his back, but his presence was enough to fill even the air with respect. His eyes, sharp as justice itself, fixed on her. Chai felt his heart tighten. Gabriel still had traces of tears on his face, but he wanted to intercede. Miguel, please, Chai placed a gentle hand on her arm, stopping her. He took a step forward and spoke. Miguel, I know you don't wish to see me. That my presence in heaven is unwanted, and perhaps you believe I have no right to cross these gates. And perhaps you're right. But I didn't come seeking forgiveness or understanding. I came because there's something more important, something I want to talk about. The silence was overwhelming. As your younger sister, I recognize your authority. And if you must punish me, I will accept it. All I ask is that you listen to what I have to say first. Miguel said nothing. He just moved forward, one step. Another. Chai held his gaze. And then, as he reached her, Miguel stopped walking and his face slowly changed. A smile formed. A big, bright, overflowing smile. And without warning, raising his arms to the sky, he screamed, My sister came home. She's back. We're going to have a party. For a moment, there was absolute silence. As if the entire sky needed a second to process it. And then, whoa! The angels burst into joy. The trumpets sounded alone. The hymns were revived with new choirs. The air was filled with light and music. Gabriel brought her hands to her mouth, stunned. Chaya was completely paralyzed. Miguel, please put me down, she said as her brother forcefully lifted her into the air and spun her around like a child. Never. Not after 1,000 years. You're finally back, Chai. Miguel, you're embarrassing me in front of everyone. Exactly. That's the punishment you deserve, the angels laughed. And in the midst of it all, wrapped in joy, Chai couldn't contain her smile. For the first time in centuries, she wasn't a fugitive. She wasn't in exile. And in the heart of heaven, the soul of a sister found her home again. The golden light from the celestial chandeliers fell softly upon the great hall. Long white marble tables stretched across the room, covered with delicacies that seemed sculpted by the divinity itself, fruits that shone like gems, fragrant breads, and meats that steamed with a perfume reminiscent of good days. The angels sang. Others danced in the air with luminous grace. Laughter, songs, and harmonies mingled in a perfect echo, as in the days of peace when heaven had not yet known loss. Amidst all that splendor, Chai sat at the high table. Her golden hair fell over her shoulders, and her ocean blue eyes reflected a mixture of wonder, nostalgia, and bewilderment. He held a juicy, perfectly seasoned piece of meat between his fingers, but he didn't bring it to his mouth. I couldn't, not because she wasn't hungry, but because she couldn't process it all. Gabriel's laughter a few seats away, the cheerful music, the angels approaching to greet her lovingly, it was all too much. This is, he muttered. I don't understand. Miguel, sitting to her right, smiled at her. He leaned closer and said in a warm voice, You can eat all you want. This party is for you, sister. It's your welcome. Chaya looked down. I'm not worthy of this. Miguel looked at her tenderly. There was no reproach in his expression, only a serene, almost paternal love. Do you remember the story of the prodigal son? Chai looked at him sideways. Yeah, it wasn't about deserving or not deserving. It was about the son's return. And that was enough to celebrate. Miguel leaned toward her slightly. You're my sister. And if you've returned after 1,000 years, that's all I need to celebrate. Chai squeezed the piece of meat in his fingers, unable to respond immediately. Her eyes filled with tears that didn't fall, but burned inside. Thank you, he whispered. Miguel laughed softly. Please stay, even if it's just for a moment. Enjoy it. Chai remained seated at the table, surrounded by heavenly dishes. He still had a piece of meat in his hand, but he hadn't tasted it. His eyes scanned the room, as if trying to convince himself that this wasn't a dream. Suddenly, Gabriel appeared at her side with a mischievous smile. He plopped down beside her with the grace of a feather and, without warning, approached with a suspicious expression, discreetly sniffing at his sister. She wrinkled her nose theatrically. Is it just me, or does someone smell like they haven't bathed in ages? Chai blinked, stunned. Gabriel burst into a melodious laugh, still staring at her. Sister, I don't mean to be cruel, but you smell awful. Seriously. It's a miracle the flowers in the sky don't wilt when you walk by. Chai blushed instantly, lowering her head with an embarrassed smile. You've already exposed me, he murmured, realizing he didn't even know the last time he truly stopped to rest. Gabriel patted her back, amused, and then offered her a shiny candy. Come on, eat something and then head straight to the sky restroom. I swear they still have scented water. Michael, who had heard part of the exchange while talking with other angels, approached with a broad smile. Gabriel's right. Rest easy, sister. This party is yours, you don't have to worry about anything tonight. But Chai looked up, still serene, and shook her head gently. No. I can't. I came to heaven because something important needs to be said and it can't wait. I need to talk to you. Now. Miguel's face instantly turned serious, as did Gabriel's. The joking faded, and the weight of something deeper began to dawn. Okay, Miguel said, in a low but firm voice. Miguel's office was quiet and solemn, built of heavenly white stone and surrounded by stained glass windows that reflected the golden light of the sky. Ancient scriptures, dimensional maps, and sacred records rested on the enormous table in the center. The air still smelled of incense and myrrh, as if time hadn't touched the place since the last time the three of them were together. Gabriel closed the door softly, while Miguel sat behind the desk. Chai stood, his gaze steady and serene. What's so urgent that it couldn't even wait for a bath? Gabriel tried to joke, but his smile faded when he saw the expression on his older sister's face. Chai did not hesitate. I found issei. Silence fell. Gabriel frowned. Miguel slowly raised his head. What did you say? He asked, almost in a whisper. I found him, Chai repeated. He lives on Earth. He's alive, or rather, he's been reborn. Gabriel stepped forward, mouth agape. But are you sure? There's no doubt, Chai replied, his voice controlled, even though his emotions were trembling inside. I would always recognize him, even if I were in complete darkness or blind. Miguel, incredulous, opened one of the old records and began flipping through pages with a swift but precise motion. Then he looked up, visibly puzzled. In that region we only know that an ancient family lives in that city, the Hayato. They're descendants of Mamoru and Kokoa. Old friends of yours, remember? Gabriel crossed her arms, confused. So how did we not notice? I wonder that too, Chai said softly, feeling a knot in his chest. How could they have ignored it? Miguel flipped through them more quickly. The records glowed with vivid letters, almost pulsing with his own pulse. Suddenly his hand stopped. An ancient, almost forgotten line. The silence became tense. Here, he said slowly. 17 years ago. A woman from the Hayato family, who suffered miscarriages until she gave birth to a healthy child, a boy. But it seems the name wasn't registered correctly. Chai's heart stopped for a moment. How could they ignore something like that? Miguel lowered his gaze. His voice was deep, but Miguel frowned, his face hardening with growing suspicion. The name wasn't registered correctly. It's only listed as boy. He ran his finger over the lines of light again. The trail seemed to have been edited. Altered. Someone interfered with these records. Gabriel was surprised. Did he interfere? How could that be? This file has restricted access, but still. Who could have done it? Miguel thought, and very seriously said, There's only one explanation, he finally said, his voice grave. There's only one hand that could have intervened without any of us noticing. Without Gabriel, or the other seraphim, noticing. Gabriel looked at him confused. What are you saying? Miguel looked up, fixed on his older sister. Chai, it was God. It was the will of the Almighty who covered this birth. Chai's heart seemed to tear from within. His breathing became labored. He fell to his knees, as if the news had sapped his strength, so she whispered in a small voice. So he doesn't want me to find him. He doesn't want me to see him again. Gabriel, moved, ran to her side and knelt beside her, taking her shoulders. Don't say that, sister. You don't know. But Chai couldn't hold back the tears that were now falling down her cheeks. Why, my lord? Miguel approached slowly. His presence imposed calm, as if the wind itself had stilled before him. He leaned forward and spoke to her in a serene, firm, yet brotherly voice. It's not like that, Chai. She looked at him, disconsolate. So why would I do it? And just like us, he cares for you too. Sometimes, his will seems like a wall. But many times that wall is a refuge. A place to strengthen yourself before the battle comes. Chaya looked down, her tears falling silently onto the golden floor. So this is a test? Maybe, Miguel said. Or maybe an opportunity. But it's not punishment. If it were, maybe you wouldn't have found him. Gabriel hugged her, this time with serene tenderness, like someone who understands a wound without needing words. Chai closed his eyes for a moment. He took a deep breath and accepted what had to happen. The air in the office felt thicker, as if the entire sky was holding its breath. Miguel looked at his sister seriously, but also with the concern of an older brother. So, Chai, he said softly, what do you plan to do now? Chai slowly stood up, wiping the tears from her face. Her eyes, though still trembling, reflected a new determination. I'm going to protect him, she replied without hesitation. Beings from the supernatural world are starting to notice him. He was attacked by a fallen angel recently. Are you okay? Gabriel asked anxiously. Yes. He managed to save him in time. But that fallen angel told me something. Issei has the boosted gear. Miguel's eyes widened slightly, impressed. That sacred gird with him? What irony and what providence. Gabriel looked down, shocked. Now I understand why you came with us, sister. Miguel nodded slowly. Yes, you came at just the right time, sister. Only you can protect him from the fate that awaits him. Chai nodded, his voice firm, his fists clenched. I won't lose him again. This time I'll protect him at all costs. Gabriel took a step forward. His voice, though soft, held a hint of doubt. But he? Does he know about you? The question hung in the air. Chaya looked down. No, she replied in a whisper. I was afraid to be in front of him, so I looked after him without him knowing about me. Maybe he doesn't remember me. He doesn't know who I am in this new life he has, and that seems okay to you? Chaya closed his eyes. His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't waver from his decision. Yes. That's fine for now. Miguel approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not alone. Count on us. Gabriel smiled softly. We're your family. We always will be. And at that moment, a faint light lit up in Chai's heart. It wasn't the hope of being loved, but the certainty that she wouldn't have to bear everything alone. In the city of Ko, the gray sky stretched over Ko like an emotionless sheet. Issei walked down the sidewalk, his head down, his shoulders slumped, his backpack slung awkwardly. He was late for class, but that wasn't what worried him. It's not fair, I just fell asleep outside, he muttered, kicking an empty can. Mom cried like I'd left home, and my dad so cold. He knew he had worried them, but the scolding had hurt more than he wanted to admit. And the worst, he himself did not know how to explain what had happened to him the night before. He was so deep in thought that he didn't see the figure coming from just around the opposite corner. Ah! A female voice shouted. Yua! Boom! The collision was inevitable. They both fell to the ground awkwardly. Issei rolled a little on the sidewalk while the other fell backward, with a small gasp of surprise. My displeasure! I don't return. The young woman said quickly, in a soft, worried tone of voice, and in a language strange to him. Issei looked up, blinking, and was met with a bewildering sight. The girl in front of him was young, perhaps his age. She had long, silky blonde hair and green eyes that seemed to sparkle even under the gray sky. But what caught his attention most was her clothing. She wore a nun's habit, with a small cross hanging from her neck. Are you a nun? He said in a low voice, more to himself than to her. She looked at him with concern, putting her hands to her chest with a shy expression. Scusa non parlo Japanese molto bene, he said in Italian, with a strong accent. Huh? What? Wait, Issei sat down on the floor, completely confused. Who dresses like that in the middle of Japan and speaks another language? The girl looked at him, a little nervous, but with a gentle smile. Then she bowed slightly toward him, as if asking for forgiveness once more. Issei, still sitting, couldn't help but think, what kind of weird day awaits me now? While Issei thought about everything that was overwhelming him in his head, Asia, on the other hand, watched him from the floor, her hands resting on her lap, while he was still trying to comprehend what had just happened. Although she didn't understand Japanese very well, she could tell the boy meant well. In fact, he seemed quite friendly. Even a little lost. This guy doesn't seem like a bad person, she thought. But before he could say another word, Issei looked at the clock on his phone, and his eyes widened in horror. "Ah! I'm late!" he shouted, jumping to his feet. Without giving Asia time to react, Issei picked up his backpack from the floor, turned towards her for a second, gave a hasty bow, and stammered, "Sorry. See you," and he ran down the street as if his life depended on it. Asia blinked several times, still on the ground. "E veloce," she murmured in Italian, surprised by the speed with which he had left. He stood for a few seconds looking in the direction where she had disappeared, then carefully stood up, shook out his habit, and smiled sweetly. He must be in a hurry for something, she thought. Or he just hates being late. Adjusting the cross that hung around her neck, Asia began walking in the same direction, almost timidly. Force I can follow him, and without thinking twice, she started running after him with short, clumsy steps, but determined. Asia ran after him as best she could, although her steps were short and her habit didn't help at all. Several people glanced at her curiously as she passed, but she barely noticed. Her attention was completely focused on following the boy who had bumped into her. Aspetta un attimo," he murmured breathlessly. He turned the corner just in time to see him hurry through the gates of a large institution. Co-Academy. The black uniform with wine-red details worn by the other students gave him a clue that it was a school and, probably, where he studied. Asia stopped in front of the gates of Co-Academy, her heart still racing from the race. Her green eyes fell on the main building and then on the students who were beginning to file in calmly, laughing, chatting among themselves, and greeting each other confidently. Some girls walked in a group, joking around as one of them took a candy out of her bag. Others shared headphones and laughed at a funny song. They all seemed happy. They all seemed to belong. Asia slowly lowered her gaze and her hands searched for the cross on her chest, holding it gently. His face showed a small, sad smile. "It must be beautiful," he murmured softly. "Havre amici ridere insieme," it must be beautiful to have friends to laugh together. For a moment he allowed himself to imagine it. She, wearing a pretty uniform like the others, walking among her classmates, listening to their voices without fear. But that illusion vanished as quickly as it had come, like a ray of sunshine hidden by clouds. She wasn't Japanese. She didn't have a home. And she wasn't allowed to be there. He looked back at the entrance. "I must find it," he said firmly. With slow but determined steps, she crossed the gate, while several students looked at her out of the corner of their eyes. Some murmured among themselves, others just ignored her. No one stopped. No one understood her. Asia walked around the courtyard, trying to smile and ask, "Scusate io cerco un ragazzo capelli castani, aci gentili e me caduto su di me stamattina." But the girls passing by just frowned, and one of them even muttered, "What did she say? Is she Italian or something?" Asia felt her voice trail off in her throat. She wanted to explain, but the language was like an invisible barrier that left her alone in the middle of a crowd. What Asia didn't know, what her pure eyes couldn't perceive yet, was that every step she took inside that academy brought her closer to a place hidden from human eyes. Because Co-Academy was not an ordinary school, it was a territory controlled by demons. "Hey you!" Suddenly, a deep and somewhat annoying voice was heard behind him. Asia turned around quickly, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. In front of her stood a young man with short blonde hair and gray eyes. He wore the Co-Academy boys' school uniform and wore a sash that distinguished him as a member of the student council. His gaze was filled with distrust. "What are you doing here?" he asked curtly. "This place isn't for visitors." Asia stepped back a little, the cross on her chest trembling slightly between her fingers. "I look like a boy. I don't speak good Japanese," he tried to explain clumsily, mixing up words he barely knew. That boy frowned at how surprised he was. "Do you speak Italian?" Asia blinked, surprised. "Parli Japanese? Ma tu capivi l'italiano?" Yeah, a little," the blonde-haired young man replied, looking away with a light cough, trying to sound disinterested. "I learned a little. Nothing important." She nodded with a smile, unsuspecting, relieved to be able to communicate. "Estio cercando quel ragazzo issei, giusto?" The boy snorted and put a hand to his head. "Issei? I think I've heard someone's name like that around here," trying not to be so obvious. That boy looked at Asia again, this time more closely. She didn't seem dangerous. Not even strong. She was clumsy, sweet, naive, And that was precisely what was worrying. No nun should be in that place, let alone someone like her. The young man, Gentsurus Saji, suddenly felt uncomfortable. Listen, he said, lowering his voice. You can't be here. This place. Asia tilted her head, confused. Pericolossus? I don't know, Saji sighed, frustrated as he didn't want to give details. I can only tell you that this place is for you. His eyes turned serious. There are things here you wouldn't understand. People who won't look kindly on someone like you. Asia frowned slightly, not fully understanding. I just want to find that boy, she thought. Saji didn't respond. He just sighed and began leading her toward the exit. Once there, he spoke in a calmer tone. According to academy rules, students are not allowed to be interrupted during classes. If you want to see that boy, it would be best to wait for him after classes are over. Although his words were reasonable, Asia couldn't help but feel a trace of worry cross her face. He had orders to approach that boy. Rainier, the fallen angel, had demanded it, but he also understood that there was nothing he could do about these obstacles. For now, he could only wait. Asia stood still for a few seconds after watching the blonde boy who had escorted her to the exit walk away. His footsteps still echoed at the entrance of the academy, firm, distant, and somehow, also lonely. The young nun looked down and let out a soft sigh. Davro aspeter, allora, he murmured with resignation. He looked around. The iron gate of the academy remained closed, and the late arriving students had already rushed inside. The street in front of her was emptying, but there were still pedestrians passing by curiously. Some looked at her once, twice. Others stared directly at her, as if she were an anomaly in the cityscape. Asia hugged her arms, uneasy. Her light habit, her sweet expression, her cross hanging from her neck, everything about her contrasted with the modern and noisy surroundings of the city. I'm calling for attention, he whispered, this time in awkwardly pronounced Japanese. I'm calling for attention. She stepped back, moving a little away from the gate, looking for a less visible corner where she could sit or at least wait without being observed like a strange object in a display case. Dove posso NR? He asked himself. I don't host Saldi, I don't have a phone, and I don't know this city. The thought of going into some shelter disappeared as quickly as it had come. I couldn't afford anything. I didn't know anyone. And, to top it all off, I was forbidden to stray too far from the boy I was supposed to be watching. Then his eyes fell on a small park across the street. It was almost empty. There was only a bench under a tree and an old drinking fountain. Asia hesitated for a few seconds, but ended up crossing carefully. He sat down on the bench, folding his hands in his lap and adjusting his habits so as not to inconvenience anyone. From there I could still see the entrance to the academy. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't comfortable, but at least there he could sit, breathe, think, and wait. Part 01 Relics of the Old and New ISCI. Co-Academy break time. The bustle of the main courtyard was the same as always, students scattered about, some eating lunch under the shade of the trees, others running through the hallways. Among them, in one of the corners, was Hayato Issei, arguing heatedly with his two old friends Matsuda, the one with the shaved head, and Motohama, the one with shiny glasses who seemed to think of himself as a perverted sage. I swear I'm not making this up, Issei exclaimed, his brow furrowed, his voice on the verge of collapse. You met her. I introduced you. Yuma-kan. Motohama gave a dry laugh, adjusting his glasses. And then what? Did they get married under a rainbow? Or did a unicorn appear to bless their love? Matsuda laughed, almost choking on his juice. Come on, Issei. Those kinds of girls don't exist. Especially not to us. Are you sure it wasn't cosplay? Or a wet dream? Issei growled, frustrated. Idiots! Issei shouted, shaking with indignation. I'm not kidding. I went out with her. We went on a date. We ate ice cream together. Both friends looked at him with expressions of absolute disbelief, as if he had just said that he was abducted by an apple-shaped spaceship. Issei, Motohama said, snickering. It's us, remember? Us. The trio of perverted outcasts. The girls move aside as we walk past in the aisle. The only ice cream we see up close is the one falling out of a kid's hand at the park. Exactly, Matsuda added, crossing his arms dramatically. If a beautiful girl approached you, it must have been by mistake. Could it be that you dreamed the whole thing and now you're mixing it up with reality? I just remember that you came to class very happy that day, Matsuda said, shrugging. But we didn't see any girls. Motohama nodded. Maybe you just caught a cold and are hallucinating strange things. Although I must admit your imagination is on another level. Issei put his hands to his head, desperate. No! It was real! I swear! But he lowered his voice a little, now with a doubtful expression. The weird thing is that after the ice cream, I don't remember anything. I had a horrible pain in my chest, and then everything went black. Matsuda and Motohama looked at him with some attention for the first time. You don't remember? Motohama repeated. Nothing, Issei murmured. Just a fleeting image of something dark and a horrible nightmare. I think I dreamed I was dying or something. I woke up lying in a distant forest, completely alone. The three of them were silent for a second, and then, as if nothing had happened, Matsuda laughed again. You've probably watched so much anime that your body can't distinguish between fantasy and reality anymore. Motohama joined in the mockery, raising his fist as if preaching a universal truth. We'll call it the Hayadu imaginary girlfriend syndrome. Issei felt a vein pop on his forehead. I'm going to kill you, idiots. He launched himself toward them, but tripped over a poorly placed root. The world spun for a second, and he lost his balance backward. What the? Wah! The impact did not reach the ground. Boing! He had collided with someone. His body gently collided with a female figure behind him. Reflexively, Issei turned as he fell, and his eyes met with blue orbs as deep as the winter ocean. Crimson-red hair. A calm, elegant expression that showed no annoyance, only surprise. He fell to the ground. She didn't. And everything around them seemed to go silent for a second. Huh! Issei blinked, completely bewildered. What? The crimson-haired girl looked at him curiously, tilting her head slightly. Are you okay? He asked in a soft, firm, and strangely reassuring voice. Issei could only nod awkwardly as he half stood up, unable to tear his gaze away from her. That hair, those eyes, that presence, who was this girl? Behind him, both Matsuda and Motohama remained completely silent. Even their obsession with beautiful girls was defeated by the sheer awe of such unparalleled beauty. Yeah, I'm fine, Issei said, still stunned. Sorry, I didn't see it coming. The young woman smiled slightly, with an expression that seemed to say, I'm used to strange scenes. Don't worry. I'm glad it wasn't anything serious. And without another word, she walked gracefully past him, heading for the main building with a serene stride. Her red hair floated gently in the air as she walked away. Issei stared at her, mesmerized. He didn't even notice his mouth was still ajar. Hey, Issei, Matsuda whispered, as if afraid of ruining the scene. Did you see her too, or was that a dream too? Because if that was real, Motohama added, swallowing. Then you just ran into a goddess. Issei didn't respond. He just stared in the direction she'd gone, and without knowing it, he had just had his first contact with Rias Gremory. Rias Gremory's footsteps echoed elegantly through the hallway. Her gait was serene, but her mind was far from the calm she displayed on the outside. What did my eyes see? The memory still throbbed intensely. That clumsy boy, with brown hair and a confused expression, had accidentally bumped into her. A mere mortal, seemingly ordinary, surrounded by two noisy friends. Nothing that normally drew attention, and yet she did not avoid him. I was able to move, Rias thought, frowning slightly. I saw him fall. I felt his clumsiness. I could have stopped it by bending down a step, but I didn't, because just as their eyes met, he saw something, a light, a brand. There, in the center of the boy's chest, as if burned into his soul, shone a small golden olive leaf. The shape was clear, a slender blade, with fine veins, as if etched with golden fire onto something invisible. But it gave off no energy. There was no holy vibration, no demonic pressure, not even the echo of a sacred gear. She was mute, silent, but intensely present. An olive leaf, he muttered to himself as he continued walking down the empty hallway. The wind blew gently, causing her long red hair to sway as her thoughts tangled. A mark, not a power, he mentally amended. I didn't feel it. I saw it, he frowned with subtle elegance. The olive leaf was a symbol of peace in many cultures, but also of grace and promise. However, none of those ideas made sense in a context like this. Not in him. Not that vulgar-looking guy with perverted friends and a non-existent reputation. And yet, that mark was there, visible only to her. Who are you, hired issei? Because yes, she already knew his name. I'd heard him before, once or twice, in school records. An average kid, with mediocre grades and perverted tendencies. What secret do you have hidden in that heart? For the first time in a long time, something unknown crossed his world. And that, for someone like WeloveGB, only meant one thing: total attention. The sun was beginning to set behind the trees surrounding Ko Academy, dyeing the sky warm shades of orange and red. The bustle of the students slowly dissolved as the clubs wrapped up their activities and the stragglers began to leave. Issei walked slowly along the sidewalk, his hands in his pockets and his spirits somewhat deflated. No one believes me about Yumikan, he grumbled, kicking a pebble off the road. Matsuda and Motohama are idiots. They met her. I introduced her. But of course, since she was pretty, they think it was a joke tch. His thoughts, however, soon turned to another topic. Ria-senpai, right? What a presence! And those a pay few. I thank the Japanese school for the tight-fitting uniforms. He smiled to himself, regaining some of his spirits, when his eyes noticed something unusual on the bench in front of the side gate of the academy. There, sitting on the bench, was a young woman with golden hair and pale skin. She wore a white and green habit, clearly foreign, and her head was tilted to one side, her mouth half open, a drop of drool falling tenderly down her cheek. Hey! It's the girl from this morning! Issei exclaimed, remembering their collision. He approached, curious, trying not to make a sound. The girl was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of her surroundings. Her breathing was calm, and her expression angelic. What's she doing here all alone? Hasn't she moved all day? He wondered, bending down a little to get a better look at her. She looks so pretty when she's sleeping. At that moment, Asia Argento, without warning, leaned to one side and lost her balance. Bang! He fell to the ground with a soft cry. Kaya! His clerical skirt was lifted slightly in the process, accidentally revealing his plain white underwear. Madonna! Asia screamed, completely red, lowering her head and covering herself as best she could. My forgiveness! My forgiveness! Issei also blushed, quickly turning his gaze while waving his hands. No, no! Calm down! I didn't mean to! I swear! Asia, who was already trembling with embarrassment, tried to regain her composure as best she could, but just then, her stomach growled loudly. Grr! An awkward silence followed that sound. Asia covered her face with both hands, wanting to disappear. I'm dying of shame, she murmured through tears. Issei couldn't help but laugh softly. It wasn't a mocking laugh, but one of those genuine, warm laughs, like when you see a clumsy puppy do something silly and charming at the same time. Hee, are you hungry? He asked as he crouched down beside her. Asia, her cheeks flushed, still didn't fully understand what he was saying, but she looked at him with those big green eyes full of tenderness and confusion. Issei scratched the back of his neck, a little nervous. He wasn't entirely sure if she understood Japanese. He leaned slightly toward her and gestured with his hands, pointing at his belly and then at the sky, as if representing the smell of food. My house food, are you coming with me? He asked slowly, not knowing why he was so worried about appearing friendly. Asia blinked a couple of times. Her stomach growled again. She didn't understand all his words, but she understood his look. The look of someone who wasn't mocking, from someone who just wanted to help. Asia smiled. A small, uncertain smile at first, but then a wider, brighter one. One of those that, even if it doesn't say anything, says everything. Issei felt a small tug in his chest at the sight of her. So that's a yes? He said, a mixture of surprise and relief. Asia nodded, still not speaking, but with that sweet smile that disarmed any doubt. Okay, he replied. Come on, before you start eating the benches. She stood up with some difficulty, clumsily wiping her habit while holding her rosary firmly. I walked beside him. Issei watched her out of the corner of his eye with a certain tenderness. It was the first time he'd walked alongside a girl like her, and for some reason, he didn't feel nervous, but rather calm. Hey, Issei said with a smile as he looked at her, what's your name? Asia blinked, barely understanding the word flames. Her face suddenly lit up, thinking she understood the question. Io non ho fiam, she said quickly, waving her hands, worried niente fuoco. Issei looked at her confused and then laughed. What? I didn't ask you if you were on fire. Asia looked at him in bewilderment, then let out a shy little laugh as well, seeing that he was laughing without malice. She pointed at her chest with one hand, as if trying to correct her mistake. My name is Asia. Asia? Oh, that's a pretty name, issei replied with a softer smile. And don't worry, I'm not on fire either. They both laughed softly. The ice was breaking without either of them quite noticing. Come on. Mom cooks better than the restaurants. Either. Interior Hayata house. The door opens and Issei's voice echoes as he enters. I'm here. From the kitchen, the sound of pots and footsteps can be heard. Issei's mother, Miki Hayatu, peeks her head out with a warm smile, followed by her husband, Gora Hayatu, who adjusts his glasses at the sight of his son and the young woman accompanying him. Huh! Miki says with wide eyes, who is this cutie? Asia is slightly startled by the exclamation, but seeing the woman smile, she relaxes and gives a small, albeit awkward, bow. Buon pomeriggio. E grazie per l'invito? Miki runs to her as if she were her long-lost daughter. How cute! She's like a porcelain doll. Gora steps forward, his expression serene, but also visibly surprised. I never thought we'd see this day, he says, looking at his wife. Our own son, has brought a girl home, and a pretty girl too, Miki adds, with genuine emotion. This is something to celebrate. Issei, who was taking off his shoes at the entrance, raises his head with a furrowed eyebrow. Hey! I'm here, you know? Could you at least pretend to be surprised by me too? Both parents are completely unaware of it. What's her name? Gora asks, addressing Asia in a friendly voice. Asia smiles, though she clearly didn't understand anything. She only managed to catch the word flame again, and this time she doesn't repeat the mistake. My name is Asia, she answers cheerfully, with her charming accent. Oh! Even her voice is cute! Miki exclaims, patting his hands. Where did you get this angel, Issei? Really? Is this how you ignore me? You traded me for an Italian nun in 10 seconds? Asia laughs softly, not understanding the conversation, but feeling the warmth of home. Her eyes shine with gratitude at the welcome she receives, and for the first time in a long time, she feels like she belongs somewhere. However, before the family left for dinner, Miki Hayatu approached Asia with an even brighter smile. My dear, why don't you take a bath before dinner? He said, gently taking her hand. You've had a long day. Asia blinked, confused, looking at Issei for help. He shrugged and then tried to explain. Bathroom? A splash. Splash. She mimed falling water. Ah. Yes. Bag no, said Asia, finally understanding, although slightly blushing. Miki let out a charming laugh. Then come with me, we'll do it together. I'll take advantage and get you a nice towel. Issei almost spat air out of his nose. Huh? What? Miki just ignored it as background noise and eagerly led Asia into the bathroom. Asia only managed to glance back shyly before disappearing behind the door with Miki. Goro, Issei's father, stood with his hands on his hips, proud. I think I have some women's clothes stashed away. I'll go get them so Asia can change after bathing. Issei jumped up from the couch. Women's clothing? In this house? But then he stopped. A shadow of terror crossed his face. He remembered that day, that dark impulse from his youth. Oh no. Goro returned with a small cardboard box. Opening it, he took out a lovely loungewear set, with lace and soft prints. He smiled and said casually, You bought these clothes when you were 15. You said it was to study what pretty girls would look like in your visual novel mind. Issei went pale. His soul left his body for a moment. Dad, no. You didn't have to say that out loud. Goro shrugged. So what? It worked. You have a girl at home today. Issei collapsed onto the floor, completely defeated. My life is over. Asia will never look at me the same. Miki's cheerful voice could be heard from the bathroom. Asia, that sponge tickles, doesn't it? And Asia's sweet laughter answered. Aha! Fail Soletico. Hi. Issei covered his face with both hands. I'm going to die. That evening, at the Hayata house, the table was set with delicious stew, steamed rice, freshly fried croquettes, and a fresh salad. Miki, still with her hair tied back in a towel after bathing, placed the last few dishes while Gora made hot tea. Asia had emerged from the bathroom with her hair still damp, dressed in the clothes Issei had bought years ago. The outfit fit her incredibly well, though it was clearly somewhat dated and a touch too pink. Much, darling? Asia murmured, looking at her reflection in the microwave, not knowing whether to feel embarrassed or happy. Issei was about to comment on how cute she looked, but his brain was still melting from embarrassment at his parents' discovery. I can't believe they humiliated me like this, in front of Asia. Mickey ignored him, as usual, and clapped enthusiastically. All right, let's all eat. Everyone took a seat. Asia stared at the food as if it were a miracle. It was clear she was hungry, but also that she didn't want to seem rude. Gora spoke to him in a warm tone. Relax, Asia-chan. You can eat whatever you want here. Asia nodded excitedly. Thank you so much. And then, as soon as he tasted the stew, his eyes opened wide as if he had just seen paradise. Bueno. Really good, Mickey smiled sweetly. Did he say it's good? I think so, Issei replied. She sounds happy. Asia, completely forgetting formality, began to eat enthusiastically. With each bite, she murmured in Italian things like holy crap, questo sapore, while Mickey looked at her with shining eyes. Oh, Issei. Look how he enjoys the food. I've never seen you eat so gratefully. Issei swallowed a bite and muttered, somewhat hurt. Because you always give me the broken croquette from the bottom, Mom. Gora chuckled and whispered to him, your mother already has a favorite, and it's not you. Issei almost choked. Asia, not fully understanding, looked at both parents and Issei and said with a big smile, Famiglia molto calorosa. My pièce sterca. Mickey bowed her head. What did he say? Issei smiled, a little more animated. I think he likes our family. Mickey put her hands to her chest, moved. Oh, how sweet. Asia-chan, you're always welcome here. Asia smiled shyly. Grazie mama di Issei. Everyone fell silent. Did he call me Issei's mom? Mickey whispered, tears in her eyes. That's it, Issei said resignedly. They already adopted her. Gora raised his teacup solemnly. Here's to the new daughter in the family. Kanpai. Mickey replied, raising hers. Asia, infected with the energy, raised her glass of water. Kanpai. Hey, Issei just looked at everyone. And me? What am I now, the dog? Don't be jealous, Issei. His mother said as she served Asia rice with more dedication than she did him. And so, amid laughter, food, and a warm, summery atmosphere, the Hayate household was filled with a new, simple joy. A dinner Asia would never forget. Later that night, as the night breeze gently moved the curtains of the Hayate house, the bustle of dinner was left behind. The table was clean, the dishes washed, and the air was filled with the pleasant scent of soap and barley tea. Miki Hayate, still in her bathrobe, smiled as she spoke to her husband. She definitely has to stay. Did you see how she ate? And that adorable little face. Gora nodded, crossing his arms. And that innocence. We can't let a girl like that walk around alone. Asia, standing next to them, was nervously trying to explain something. Too can I have to go, it's late, I can't stay here. Too can I have to go, it's late, I can't stay here. But neither Mickey nor Gora understood a single word of Italian. They just saw a sweet girl saying things in a soft voice. Look, look! She's saying yes! Mickey exclaimed, excited. She's excited, Issei, at the end of the hallway, slapped his forehead. No, Mom! I think he's saying no. I'm afraid this is a kidnapping. You're so exaggerated, Issei. Look at that little face. Who would say no with that smile? Her mother insisted, gently pushing Asia toward the guest room. Asia, still confused, was gently guided to the bedroom, where Mickey wished her good night with a kiss on her forehead. The nun only managed to murmur, thank you. When the door closed and she was alone, Asia looked around, not knowing how to process it all. The room wasn't large, but it was warm. It had a bed with soft, clean sheets, a teddy bear-shaped lamp, and even a small vase of artificial flowers. A clean robe was draped over the chair. He sat on the edge of the bed slowly. He looked at his hands. Then, he looked at the ceiling. Then he looked at his knees and lowered his head. And then, the silence in the room was broken by a soft sob. Tears began to fall. First a few, then an unstoppable torrent. Asia pressed her fists against her eyes as if she wanted to stop them, but she couldn't. Perch, are you a cosi cativa person? She clutched the blanket tightly. Her shoulders were shaking. I don't deserve it, questo amore, questo calor, questo sorriso. She remembered the warm bath, the taste of the food, the laughter at dinner, The way issei smiled at her without any malice, and how her mother washed her hair so carefully, as if she were really a daughter. A family, she whispered softly, her throat tight with emotion. A father, a mother. He covered his face again, burying his forehead in the blanket, and all of that hurt, because she knew he had come with a dark intention. Rainer, the fallen angel who brought her to Japan, had given her a clear order: approach the boy named Hayate Issei and bring him to her. Why? Asia didn't quite understand, but she knew it wasn't for anything good, and yet, that boy had treated her kindly. He had offered her his home, his food, but most of all his family, and that was tearing her apart inside. I my despise so much, so much. Silence filled the room again, interrupted only by the low sobs of a girl, her heart torn between what she was forced to do and what her soul truly yearned for. Part 02. He who carries the sacred power of miracles. Either. When midnight arrives, the Hayate house slept in silence. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of wood served as a reminder that the world was still turning. Asia, sitting on the edge of the bed, was breathing heavily. With trembling hands, she folded the clean robe and clothes Hayato Issei's parents had left for her. He carefully placed it on the chair, as if it were a small altar to the kindness he had received. Then she changed, putting on her nun's habit again. Her fingers took a while to tie the laces. Her body was stiff, her soul even stiffer. He left no note. He didn't open the door loudly. He didn't say goodbye. It just disappeared, as if it had never been there. She walked alone in the dim moonlight, her eyes fixed on the ground, the wind stirring her hair. With each step, the distance from the warmth of that family increased, and with it, the weight on her chest. But I had to do it. If she stayed, she'd hurt them. Rainer said so. Those evil fallen angels weren't going to hesitate, and Asia couldn't let anything happen to Issei, or his mother, or anyone. The old, abandoned church stood at the edge of the neighborhood, like a corpse of what had once been sacred. The crosses were rusted, and the windows were boarded up. Asia carefully pushed the door open. It creaked, as if in protest. Inside, the darkness was absolute, broken only by a few lit candles around the destroyed altar. In the center, on the steps, Rainer waited for her, her eyes half closed, and her arms crossed. You took a while, he said coldly. I thought you'd chicken out. Asia swallowed. Forgive me, I am going back alone. Forgive me, I just wanted to. Speak up, you silly girl. Rainer growled, walking toward her. Asia lowered her head, her heart pounding in her chest. Please, Raineressima, don't hurt Isiken. He doesn't know anything. He's a good person. I'll watch over him. I'll do whatever you ask, just don't hurt him. Rainer looked at her with an arched eyebrow. The silence between them grew heavy. Then he laughed. Are you serious? You came here to beg for that ridiculous boy? The idiot who can barely handle a woman? Asia looked up, tears forming again. To just want no one to suffer. That family are good people. Rainer approached with a sharp step. Before Asia could step back, she grabbed her robe collar with one hand, lifting her slightly off the ground. You don't think? I shouted angrily. You're here to obey. You little bastard. Asia kicked weakly, her hands on Rainer's arm, trying to break free. Your compassion is weakness, Asia. You're not meant for this world. You're just a broken tool. And then the first slap resounded like a whiplash in the empty church. Asia's face twisted violently, her cheek instantly burning. Before I could catch my breath, the second slap came. Rainer had hit him out of anger at Asia's words. Don't you dare intercede for him again. He spat at her, letting her fall to the ground like a used rag. Asia fell to her knees on the dusty ground, her cheek reddened and her head bowed. He didn't cry, not anymore. Tears were meaningless in a place where pain was punishment for having a heart. But suddenly soft laughter broke the silence. Well, said Middlet, a girl dressed as a gothic Lolita, with cruel eyes and a crooked smile. Who knew the sweet little nun had the guts to stand up to Rainerzin? Calawarna, tall, elegant, and dressed in wine-colored leather, crossed her arms, smirking. It makes me laugh how these people still think the world is fair, he commented, looking at Asia as if she were a squashed cockroach. Look how she's trembling. How useless. Donasek, leaning against a fallen column, let out a chuckle as he slowly sharpened the blade of his light spear. Humans were supposed to be easy to manipulate, but this little girl turned out to be more stubborn than I expected. Of course, that makes her more entertaining. Asia, still on the ground, was breathing heavily. Not only from the blow, but from the fear, from the anguish growing in her chest. She was surrounded by human-shaped monsters, and although her body trembled, her will still held fast. Rainier clicked her tongue and turned to them. "Shut up! Do you think you're funny?" she said in a sharp voice. "This girl is a nuisance." She crouched down in front of Asia, grabbed her chin tightly, and forced her to look at her. "Listen to me, trash. If you want to protect that boy and his family, then take him where we want him. Bring him here. Make him trust you. Make him come closer, and when the time comes..." Asia's eyes widened in horror and she interrupted. "No, I can't." Rainier squeezed his face tighter. "Of course you can," he growled. "And you will. Because if you don't, I'm going to make him suffer slowly. I'm going to pull out each of those teeth with my fingers, I'm going to break his bones one by one, and I'm going to make you stand there and watch. Do you understand?" Asia didn't reply, she just closed her eyes tightly, and could barely utter, "Signore dammi forza Lord give me strength." As soon as he said those words, laughter erupted around him. "Did you hear her?" Middle mocked, cackling cruelly. "A pure idiot! Begging the heavens, when the heavens spit her out." Calawarna smiled contemptuously. "It's adorable, in a way, like a beaten dog still licking the hand that threw it out." Donasi crossed his arms, chuckling. "How touching! Pleading with a god who discarded her like garbage." Rainier leaned down, grabbed Asia by the collar of her robe, and lifted her up with one hand as if she weighed nothing. "Do you pray? Do you?" She spat in his face, literally. "You disgusting hypocrite!" He slapped her brutally, so hard that Asia's face spun around completely. Before she could react, he slapped her again, even harder. "God doesn't want to see you. He discarded you like he discarded us," he shouted in her face, shaking her. "Have you forgotten? They threw you out. They took everything from you. And we gave you shelter. You owe us your life, you ungrateful scum." Asia, her cheek bloodied, barely managed to answer in a broken voice, "I never betrayed God." Rainier threw her to the ground like a sack of garbage. The blow drew a moan from her. Asia tried to get up, but Rainier planted her boot on Asia's face, crushing her. "Of course you did," Rainier said with hatred. "You cured a demon. That was a crime. And it wasn't out of love or compassion. It was because of that sick need you have to be loved. You're weak. And heaven has no place for weak souls." Asia was crying, but she was still murmuring prayers, barely audible. Rainier clicked her tongue and spat at her again. "Do you know what God hates most? Hypocrisy. And you are its living reflection. You disguise yourself as a saint, but you were the one who sought our door. Don't you see? We are honest. We know we are damned. We embrace our darkness. But you can't even look at your own shadow." Calawarna intervened coldly. "Sometimes I think she's worse than us. At least we don't pretend to be good." Middle nodded, throwing a stone that hit Asia's back. "Asia the holy liar. Heaven will never come for you." Asia wept, huddled together, covered in dust, blood, and contempt. And yet, between each sob, her mind continued to pray. "Lord, if you are still there, please help me. Not for me but for them." Despite the cruelty, the pain, the utter humiliation, Asia kept praying, hoping anyone would hear her. When someone, even in the midst of hatred, pain, and betrayal, clings to hope with sincere prayer, that moment can be the seed of a miracle. Because it's not just about changing reality, but about showing that there is still light where everyone believes there is only darkness. For Asia, all she had to offer was her noble heart. That night was the one that really changed his life. A gust of wind blew violently through the church entrance, creaking the doors and extinguishing the candles. The four fallen angels immediately turned around, alert. A figure emerged against the moonlight. Its footsteps echoed decisively on the broken stones. A boy. He was breathing heavily. With rage. It was Issei. "Let her go!" he shouted, his fists clenched, tears mixed with sweat on his face. "Give me back Asia!" Everyone stood still for a moment. Asia, slowly raising her face, thought her eyes were deceiving her. "Issei?" Issei didn't respond. He took a step forward, still staring at Asia. His body was trembling, not from fear, but from fury. moments before. The night at the Hayato house passed peacefully until Issei, drowsy, went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It was then, looking out the window, that he saw a female silhouette crossing the courtyard. He recognized the figure immediately. Asia, he frowned. Huh! Where are you going so late? For a moment, his mind thought the worst. Is he just leaving without saying anything? Did he steal something? He felt bad for being suspicious. But the impulse was stronger. He slipped out quietly and decided to follow her. He followed her through several streets until he saw her arrive at the old abandoned church in the district. Issei stopped in his tracks. Something about that place had always given him the creeps. What are you doing here? Are there more people inside? He didn't dare enter. He circled the building, looking for a broken window or a hole. Then he found one. He peered in. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Asia was kneeling. In front of her was Yuma-kan. What? Yuma? He whispered, stepping back sharply, but soon he heard screams. Rainerith fake Yuma was insulting Asia, humiliating her, hitting her, and next to her were 3 other beings with black wings. Issei froze, listening to everything. He listened to Asia beg for her family to be left alone. She heard him say he didn't want to hurt them, so she left alone. She heard Rainer accuse her of betraying heaven, and Asia, sobbing, say she only wanted to help. Issei's eyes filled with tears. His hands pressed against the stone edge of the window. What's all this? Why are they doing this to him? She wanted to run away. Her body was shaking. She was afraid. Afraid of those beings, afraid of dying. But at the same time, something in her chest burned. A stabbing sensation, as if your heart couldn't stay still. And then it was. A voice echoed in his mind. A voice just like yours, but firmer, clearer, more determined. Are you just going to leave her there? Just like that? Are you a coward? Issei put his hands to his head. The pain was intense. Who are you? I'm you, the one who can't stand to see that girl cry. At that moment, a glowing olive blossom-shaped mark appeared on his chest, beneath his clothes, and began to glow with white light. The pain disappeared, but his body felt lighter, clearer. No. I can't leave her there, he murmured with tears in his eyes. She doesn't deserve that. Without thinking twice, Issei burst into the church. There he was, Hayato Issei, with eyes bathed in rage and determination. Let her go! He shouted. Give me back Asia! Asia lifted her face from the ground, her cheeks still marked, her hair stuck to her skin from tears. Her blue eyes, still teary, opened in amazement at the sight of him standing before the fallen angels. Issei. The light of the olive blossom shone brightly on Issei's chest, golden, pure, alive, as if his soul was silently screaming that he was not alone. Rainer took a step back. His eyes, for the first time, reflected neither mockery nor contempt but fear. No, it can't be, she murmured. Her voice trembled, though she tried to maintain her composure. Calawarna frowned. What's up, Rainer? Rainer looked at Issei as if she saw a ghost. That mark, he whispered. That golden mark? That's not a sacred gear. Donasik narrowed his eyes. What is it? Rainer gritted her teeth, her breathing ragged. It is a sign, a condemnation for the fallen. Everyone fell silent. That's the mark of the olive leaf. That boy was touched by God. Middle swallowed, taking a step back. A man touched by God? Here, he was only supposed to have one sacred gear. Rainer roared that information was false. Someone lied to us. The golden glow of the mark intensified as Issei took a step forward. He didn't fully understand it, but something was manifesting inside him. Asia, on the ground, her eyes wide open in wonder, felt her heart fill with an indescribable peace. That heat, that light, that boy, he was her miracle. Issei, she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Have you been chosen by God? But Issei didn't respond. His gaze was fixed ahead, on the fallen angels. His breathing was calm. His presence imposing. It was as if the Issei I knew had vanished and suddenly changed into the figure of a great warrior. The olive leaf on his chest burned with an impossible gold, and his body began to glow from within, a pure white light that covered all her skin, an ancient, living energy that did not belong to this world. Rainer took a step back. What the hell is this power? His voice trembled, but then, in a desperate impulse, he raised his arm and shouted, Donasik! Calawarna! Middlet! Kill him! The three fallen angels did not hesitate. They opened their black wings, raised their dark light weapons, and launched themselves at Issei. But that's when it happened. The light inside Issei burst forth. A heavenly roar shook the foundations of the church, and from his chest, as if the sky itself responded to injustice, a blinding glow was released in all directions. Wa! They all shouted. A pillar of light pierced the ruined roof and rose into the night sky, like a signal to the stars. The church was lit up as if the sun itself had descended there. Asia fell backward from the force, covering her eyes. But to her surprise, she felt no pain. That light did not burn. It was warm. He protected her. Rainier and the others, on the other hand, were hit as if by a wave of pure fire eating away at their flesh. My eyes! Rainier screamed, falling to her knees, hands covering her face. Middle was writhing on the ground, sobbing. I don't see anything. Donaseek fell against a column, vomiting blood, his face covered in ash. His eyes had been completely burned out. Calawarna screamed in horror, as a dark liquid ran down her face. This power, this energy. No! No! Issei stood in the center of it all, his body enveloped in a silent white aurora, until, little by little, his eyes closed. Assaizen Asia whispered, getting closer as best she could. He fell to his knees and then forward, fainting from the effort and spiritual burden of his awakening. Assaizen! Asia rushed to his side, taking him in her arms. Hold on. Please! He held it tightly, trembling. Hold on. Assaizen, she whispered with tears falling on her pale face. Around him, the fallen angels continued to groan in pain, completely blind, writhing under the remains of that attack. Asia didn't look at them. She only had eyes for Issei, the boy who protected her, but she couldn't waste time at that moment. Asia had to think fast. The light faded. The ruins of the old church were once again plunged into shadow, barely illuminated by the moon peering through the collapsed roof. Asia, her body trembling, hugged Issei against her chest. He didn't react. He didn't respond. Assaizen, she whispered. Please open your eyes, Assaizen. He shook it gently, but nothing. Her skin was still warm, but her breathing was shallow, so weak, it's as if that glow had consumed all its strength. The screams of Rainier and the other fallen angels did not stop. Ah! My eyes! What is this pain? And oh! Take this damn light away from me! Asia could hardly bear to listen to them, not out of compassion, but out of terror caused by those inhuman wails. But this time, she didn't run away. She held Issei tightly against her chest. He looked up with his eyes covered in tears, and with a trembling voice he whispered with his soul in his throat, Signore dammi forza, Lord, give me strength. And he prayed. He prayed with every fiber of his being, not for herself, but to be able to save him. Let me please carry him. Give me the strength to take him home. To protect him like he protected me. Her legs, which could not even support her because of fear, firmed up. Her thin arms regained new strength. His back, previously hunched with fear, straightened firmly. Asia stood up, and with all the care her heart allowed, she carried Issei on her back. Thank you, she whispered. I promise. Assaizen, I'll get you home safely. He stepped through the rubble with slow steps, while the echo of demonic wails resounded behind him. The fallen angels only showed a pitiful scene, because their pain was more like a horrible cry of lament. Being blind and immersed in the deepest pain, they could not stop her. Asia walked through the shattered door without looking back. With Issei's figure on her back, she left said place. However, inside the ruined church, Rainier's screams of pain still pierced the silence. Damn it! He roared, his voice cracking. Haida Issei, I'm going to kill you. You and anyone protecting you. I'm going to break them. One by one. With my bare hands, still blind, but driven by hatred, she stretched her arms into the void and materialized several spears of light. His aura was distorted, corrupted by despair. Everyone die! He shouted, throwing one of his spears at random, which crashed into a ruined column. And just as he was about to throw another one, something changed. The air stopped. All movement, all vibration, even breathing, seemed to disappear. A freezing wind, impossible on that warm night, blew into the broken church. The flames of the spears of light went out, and a deep, sepulchral silence covered everything. Rainier's spears trembled in her hand, and her body froze. What is? She whispered, her lip trembling. A subtle sound, like the whisper of wings. And then, an overwhelming presence descended. Chai, standing among the rubble, wrapped in her holy aura and dark cloak, her long golden hair flowing as if she were floating on a plane beyond this world. Her ocean blue eyes shone like the beautiful moon. Rainier turned her head, still unable to see, but sensing the aura, as if justice itself had taken shape. "What is this?" Donasek stammered, blindly crawling on the ground. "That power?" "No, it can't be," Calawarna whispered, her voice breaking. Screams were heard, one by one. First, Middle's short, dry scream, followed by Donasek's piercing shriek, then Calawarna's curtained roar, suddenly drowned by a wet smacking sound, and in the end Rainier. His voice rose like a howl from beyond the grave in the fear of the darkness, a scream filled with desperation, hatred, and pure fear. It lasted just a few seconds, until he was abruptly silenced. Silence returned. The scene was terrible. A second later, Rainier's head was brutally severed from her body. Chai held it with his right hand, squeezing it tightly, as if he could still silence what remained of his soul. He looked at her coldly, with absolute contempt. Then, with a low, icy voice like the edge of his sword, he said, "I warned you." And without further ado, he dropped his head to the ground with a loud thud. The silence was absolute. Outside the abandoned church, the moon bathed the grounds in a pale glow. Asia, still trembling and carrying issei with difficulty, had managed to reach almost the rusty perimeter fence. The silence was almost absolute, until he felt it. A different aura. It wasn't hostile, but it was huge, sacred, unmistakable. Asia's heartbeat quickened. A figure was approaching through the mist. She was a woman of supernatural beauty, long, golden hair, like threads of sunlight, a blend of heavenly purity and unwavering strength. She wore a dark robe, but had armor guards surrounding her. She clearly had the figure of a warrior. A white cross shone on his chest, and on his cloak, the symbol of the golden olive tree engraved on said armor protection. Asia stepped back a bit with issei on her back. Who are you?" The figure did not respond immediately. Chai walked with silent steps, his eyes reflecting a deep mix of love and determination. Without asking permission, he approached to be as close to issei as possible. And with a delicacy that contrasted with the death he had just caused minutes before, he caressed her face with infinite tenderness, as if that simple caress could alleviate all the torments of her soul. A small smile appeared on her lips. She didn't say anything, but it was clear that she loved him beyond words. Asia watched the scene, not daring to interrupt. I was bewildered but not scared. The girl had something that made her feel at peace, something that made her trust, even though she didn't understand why. Chai looked up at her, his eyes reflecting sincere gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. "Thank you for taking care of the person I love the most." Asia blinked, confused. "He? Do you know him?" Chai nodded. "More than you might imagine, but it's not time to talk about the past yet." Asia swallowed, her chest filled with a mixture of excitement and mystery. Who are you?" Chai watched her for a few seconds. Then he slowly stood up. "My name is Chai. And I'm an angel." Asia was speechless, but above all confused. The presence of that woman felt older than the church itself, purer than any being he had ever met in his entire life. Chai looked up at the starry sky. Her eyes hardened as if she sensed something in the distance that Asia couldn't see. "You can't stay any longer. What happened inside has caught the attention of unwelcome beings. You have to get him to safety. Protect him, even if you don't understand why now." Asia lowered her head, holding on to issei tighter. "Will I see you again?" Chai gave him a serene, almost melancholic look. "Yes, once they're safe, I'll find you and speak with you directly," she said as she began to turn her back. "Please don't tell issei anything about me or what happened tonight. I have a feeling he won't remember any of this. The time will come when we tell him everything that happened." And with those words, Chai walked away in the direction of the abandoned church. As the mist began to envelop his figure, Asia stood in silence, watching him disappear into the shadows. The wind blew gently, as if respecting the woman's passage. The name Chai was engraved in his heart, even without knowing who he really was. But something inside Asia told him that he would see her again very soon. Chai walked forward with serene steps, letting the night breeze caress his face. There was no coldness or tension on that face. There was a smile, a small, but true smile. The kind of smile that blooms when the soul finds a glimmer of light in the midst of darkness. So it finally happened, she whispered to herself, her eyes glowing softly. Issei, you're waking up. He pressed his hands slightly against his chest, just where the olive emblem rested on his sacred garment. That radiance, that power was undeniable. The power of miracles, not a sacred gear, not a technique, but the other half of a unique power that split in 2000s of years ago. Her voice trembled a little, as if she were holding back tears of relief. It must be because I sealed the other power of that sacred gear. Now, its purest essence has begun to bloom, and someone helped it not give up. Then Chai stopped in his tracks. He looked up at the sky, remembering the face of the girl carrying Issei. That little nun, she has a pure heart full of faith. And those eyes, that tenderness. She looked down, thoughtful. Her smile grew more nostalgic. Only her hair color is different, but she's just like Cocoa. My friend from 15,000 years ago. He closed his eyes for a moment. The memory of that old friendship that I never forget. The sound of her laughter, her courage, her compassion. It can't be a coincidence. Interior of the abandoned church. 3 magic circles quickly appeared in that place. The dust still hung in the air, illuminated by the remnants of holy light that were fading like dying fireflies. 3 figures emerged. This is Saji gulped, his face pale. What the hell happened here? Ruruko took a step back at the state of the ground's sacred burns, impact marks, and corpses. The bodies of several fallen angels were scattered, some twisted, others unrecognizable. But it was Tsubaki Shinra who stopped in front of the center of that abandoned church. There, lying lifeless in a pool of her own blood, lay Reiner's body. His decapitated body was an image none of the girls would ever forget. Tsubaki adjusted her glasses, silently. They decapitated her, he said in a low voice, analyzing the position of the corpse. It wasn't a quick cut, they ripped her head off while she was still alive. A brutal, methodical execution. Saji frowned. He was used to violence, but this was different. There was a heavy air. This wasn't just any battle, he murmured. It was a massacre. Ruruko hugged herself. The energy still hung there, thick, like spiritual ash. Who could have done this? Fallen angels aren't weak. Tsubaki walked towards the other figures. Look at the attacks. Not fire, not demonic magic. This was holy aura. He crouched down next to one of the fallen angels, who had a precise wound in the center of his chest, as if the light had passed through it completely. Someone who has no mercy for his enemies. Saji took a step back. Do you think it was an angel? Tsubaki slowly shook her head. An ordinary angel can't be so cruel and pure at the same time. That's what's strange. Now, if this was the work of an angel, then we're not talking about an ordinary being. Saji gulped, feeling cold sweat running down the back of his neck. Are you saying he was more than just an angel? Not exactly. Tsubaki stood up slowly. This isn't heavenly punishment, or an act of war. It's a message. Someone is down here, acting without explanation, and they're not bothering to hide it. Ruruko took a step back. But if it's not an ordinary angel, what is it? Tsubaki looked up, her eyes behind her glasses shining with suspicion and a hint of fear. An ancient being. Beyond the celestial hierarchies. An executioner, or perhaps something worse. Worse? Saji asked, puzzled. Tsubaki nodded, and then, without anyone saying another word, a shiver ran through the 3 of them, as if something had been watching them. An invisible pressure, like that of a hidden gaze in the shadow of the altar. Clang. The metallic sound echoed throughout the central part of the abandoned church, dry, authoritarian. A single step, but charged with a power as solemn as it is overwhelming. The figure emerged from the gloom of the central corridor. A woman with impeccable gait, dressed in a dark habit reminiscent of a saint, but those armor protectors undoubtedly gave the image of a great warrior, with holy armor plates that shone with the ancient symbol of the olive blossom engraved on their chest. Her golden hair fell like a perfect waterfall over her shoulders. His eyes, however, did not reflect peace, but a cold mixture of serenity and absolute determination. Then Saji looked to his left, sensing something bad. Tsubaki and Ruruko were collapsed on the floor. He was on guard. He didn't understand why his companions had fallen unconscious without even noticing. But now, that woman looked at him differently. Was it you? He asked, holding his breath. You killed those fallen angels and did that to my companions? Chai did not hesitate. Yes. I did that. Direct. Cold. True. Saji swallowed. Are you going to kill me too? Chai gently shook his head. His tone, in contrast to his previous statement, dropped to a more relaxed, almost warm level. No. I don't intend to fight, unless you wanted to fight. I also have no intention of hiding from the demons of this city if they interfere with my path or what I'm trying to protect. Chai paused his lips. But honestly, I didn't expect this. A small smile appeared on his face. She wasn't cruel. She was serene, full of a rare sincerity. Saji felt his body relax involuntarily. The aura that had previously overwhelmed him gradually dissipated, leaving in its place a deep calm, as if standing in front of an ancient, sacred lake, full of secrets. You're so beautiful, he blurted out without thinking. And he blushed instantly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Thank you, Chai interrupted with a slight smile, moving a little closer. What's your name? Genshiro Saji. Then I'll just call you Saji. My name is Chai, she said in a friendly, almost maternal tone. She moved a little closer, until Saji could see that beneath the armor and robes was a woman of both silent and powerful sweetness, a living contradiction. Chai changed his gaze with more seriousness, although without losing his kindness. The reason I wanted to talk to you is very simple. Saji, you, except for your hair, your way of speaking, and your gaze, you look a lot like someone I knew a long time ago. His name was Mamoru. Saji opened his eyes in surprise. Mamoru? He was a great friend from 15,000 years ago. But don't get me wrong, she added immediately, before he could ask the obvious. I'm not saying you're his reincarnation. You don't share his soul, but your presence reminds me of him. And that's reason enough for me to want to have this talk with you. Saji, still perplexed, could only nod. Then Chai took a step back and his gaze became serious, though still confident. What I want to ask of you is simple: help me avoid unnecessary conflict with the demons of this city right now. I have no intention of being enemies with you, but I also won't back down if you try to challenge me. What I protect is something I can't allow anyone to touch. Saji took a deep breath. The air was still permeated with that scent of sacred destruction. The blood had dried in strange patterns, as if the light itself had burned it before it touched the ground. And in front of him, that woman, that enigmatic figure with eyes that concealed centuries. Chai stood among the lifeless bodies of the fallen angels. Saji, Chai said in a firm but non-aggressive voice, I didn't hide. I wanted you all to see this scene. Saji looked at her confused. Because I will have no mercy. The silence was broken only by the creaking of the floorboards under their feet. Then Chai moved forward a little further, the light from the broken stained glass projecting sacred shapes onto his armor. Don't tell anyone I was responsible for this. Not me, not Issei's. Hearing that name, Saji took a step back, in disbelief. Issei? Was Hayate Issei here? Chai nodded gravely. Yes. But no one must know. The less they know, the less exposed they'll be. High-class demons probably already suspect something happened here. Tell the one who sent you the truth, but not the whole truth. Saji took a deep breath. And what exactly do I tell him? That it was a clash between factions of angels and fallen angels. An ancient battle unrelated to the demons or the city. It omits everything about me. And Issei. That will be difficult if my mistress decides to investigate. Even worse, the leader of the Gremory clan says she will investigate. Chai looked down for a moment. Then she looked him straight in the eyes. I know. That's why I also need you to help me with something else. Another thing? Protect Issei. From those female demon leaders. Keep them from getting too close to him, if you can. I don't trust demons, but you're the exception. I also see something special in you. Saji put his hand to the back of his neck, visibly uncomfortable. That sounds impossible. Protect him from two high-class devils? But then he looked around. The bodies, the wounds, the sacred energy still pulsing in the walls. He just remembered that Chai wasn't playing, but I guess he said with a resigned sigh. I'll try. Even if this blows my mind. Chai smiled, this time for real. Her smile was soft, bright, beautiful. Thank you, Saji. I promise we'll talk again soon. And with that, he turned around. Chai walked off. Saji was left alone. I didn't know what I was going to do now. Her companions would soon wake up and she had to invent an elaborate excuse. TCH hell, he growled, tossing his hair in frustration. What mess did they get me into? But then he remembered that smile. And unable to help himself, he smiled back, with a mixture of resignation. I will. I don't know how, but I will. Either. Part 03 The Cute Haida Family. Either. Haida Family Residence. Early morning hours. Asia could barely stand as she walked through the silent streets of Kuo. His clothes were stained with dirt and dried blood, his face covered in cuts that burned with every gust of the night wind. But in her arms, protected like the greatest of treasures, rested the unconscious body of Issei Haida. When she arrived in front of the house, the sky was just beginning to lighten. She knocked softly on the door, fearful, not knowing what to say or how to explain. The door swung open. "Issei?" was the broken voice of Miki Haida, who stopped when he saw his son's condition. Her eyes filled with tears instantly, and without waiting for an explanation, she took him by the shoulders, falling to her knees as she hugged him. "Goro, come! Quickly!" Issei's father appeared seconds later, still in his pajamas. His expression changed from sleep to despair in a single second. "My God, what happened?" he exclaimed. Asia could barely speak. "Louis is alive, he has only discovered these scans." Goro looked at her briefly, without judgment or suspicion. He bent down, picked up his son's body firmly, and carried him inside. Miki remained crying, caressing Issei's face as they guided him inside. Asia stood at the entrance, watching the scene with a soft smile. It was warm, familiar, and for that very reason, he began to walk away. "I have nothing to do here anymore," she whispered to herself, turning to leave. But before she could take a single step, she felt a hand gently take her arm. She turned around immediately, scared. Miki Haida looked at her with his eyes still wet, but with a tenderness that Asia had never felt before. Thank you for bringing him back," the woman said through tears. "Thank you for not leaving him alone." Asia took a step back, trembling. My despias. It's my fault too, I'm sorry. It's my fault." She brought her hands to her wounded face, hiding them in shame. Tears began to flow uncontrollably. "My despias, excusami e tutta colpa mia," he murmured in Italian, between sobs. "I pray to you, do not hate me." Miki didn't understand a single word, but she understood the pain. I understood fear. And most of all, I understood what it was like to see a lost child feeling guilty about what she couldn't control. Without saying anything, he put his arms around her and hugged her tightly. Asia froze. It was warm, it was a mother's hug. One she'd never received, one she thought she'd never have. "I don't know what happened," Miki whispered, her voice shaking. "But I don't want you to go. Not now, you're hurt. You're alone. And you brought my son home." Asia gritted her teeth. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees, bursting into tears. Non posso più," she said through tears. "Nessuno mi ha mai abbracciata così." Miki stroked her hair and held her close to his chest. "You don't have to understand me. Just stay with us. At least for tonight." Goro appeared in the doorway, nodding silently, his gaze soft and without reproach. Inside, Issei's body lay on the sofa, covered by a blanket. He was breathing softly. For the first time in a long time, Asia felt like she belonged somewhere. For the first time, I wasn't just an exile. Not just a former nun. Not just a reject. It was simply Asia, a girl with a broken heart, being taken in by a family who had also suffered. And that night, amidst the pain, the Haida family gained another daughter. Moments after the Academy checkout time, the sun fell softly on the trees, painting the park in warm, golden hues. In the distance, Chai crouched stealthily on the edge of the roof like a cat, the fabric of his cloak trailing as if it were part of the shadow itself. His eyes shone brightly as he followed them. "So now you smile like that for anyone?" he whispered through gritted teeth. In the distance, Issei was walking beside the mysterious girl. He looked like he'd just woken her up from the park. She stumbled a little, but he held her by the shoulder. The shoulder. With confidence. Chai was trembling. Literally. That's not a casual smile. Issei. That's your special for me smile, isn't it? Chai narrowed her eyes, crossing her arms tightly in an attempt to contain her jealous feelings. However, she was trembling so much that she almost slipped off the roof. She held onto the edge with both hands as she watched Issei and the blonde girl walk home. Like a cat, Chai began to stealthily go from tile to tile. When they arrived at the Haida residence, a completely familiar and harmonious atmosphere could be noticed, with a boy taking a girl to meet his parents. Seeing this, Chai clenched her fist in anger. A faint flicker of her power enveloped her before dissipating, but it wasn't time to be seen. Not yet. Now, in the eyes of that jealous angel, she watched as those two entered the house together through the front door. Barely 5 seconds later, Issei's mother opened it, her eyes shining with excitement. "Mom loves her too, yay?" Chai screamed inwardly, strangling a piece of her cloak with her teeth. "No way! That was a hug!" A hug! The father also appeared, greeting with a friendly gesture. "Have they accepted her into the family yet? And what am I then?" She bit the fabric as if she wanted to tear it off. Her wings craved to spread out in anxiety, but she forced herself to keep a low profile. Literally. If she lifted herself too high, they might see her. "It can't be, it can't be, it can't be, Issei is mine." But amidst the internal chaos and soap opera-like jealousy, Chai had to restrain himself, even as he spied on said family dining so happily. Then, calmer now, she looked at the girl better. "Wait, those eyes, that sweetness." He blinked. His frown softened. "Coco, no?" The girl had that same gentle air, that way of tilting her head when she spoke, that overflowing innocence. Chai's jaw loosened. The fabric of her cloak was bitten damp, but free. "So you're not alone, Issei." She decided to move away from the Hayate house. She sat cross-legged on one of the neighboring rooftops, letting the wind move her hair. "Look at yourself in this life. You have a home, parents who love you, and a friend who seems like a reflection of those times." He smiled, for the first time since he arrived. "Although I'm not going to let that girl have a clear path." But he said it jokingly. Deep down, Chai no longer felt threatened. Only a pang of nostalgia, and the joy of knowing that the boy he'd loved for 15,000 years wasn't alone. Then he sighed. "Okay, you can have your moment of peace, Issei. But don't relax too much, because I came to take back what's mine." And without making a noise, he let himself fall towards a lower roof, like a jealous cat, but with a calm heart. Then he slept until midnight, when he noticed that girl left Issei's house, beginning of a new life. 5 days after the incident at the abandoned church, the mid-morning sun gently caressed the neighborhood streets as Asia Argento walked with a grocery bag in each arm. His gait was clumsy, and his expression was a mixture of concentration and nervousness. He watched each traffic light and each pedestrian crossing carefully, as if they were puzzles he had to solve to move forward safely. "Red, wait. Green, cross now?" he whispered in Italian, trying to mentally translate every sign, every sound. Although she had insisted on going alone, the city was still intimidating, but Asia didn't want to be a burden anymore. She wanted to help, she wanted to be useful. She wanted to be part of the Hayate family. "Bene, ho tutto sulla lista express Asia if I am enthusiastic." As she walked, her thoughts drifted like leaves in the wind, dragging her back to that moment in the church, when everything seemed dark and lost, until that miracle happened, that incident that changed his life forever. That boy named Hayate Issei had not only come to help her, but also made her heart find a place to belong. But that wasn't all that had happened. "Once they are safe, I will seek you out and speak to you directly." Those were the words of that beautiful woman with golden hair, a promise given by that female figure who very kindly touched Issei's sleeping face. But 5 days had passed, 5 sunrises that Asia had been waiting for, and he didn't come back. "I didn't tell Issei anything or anyone else, as I promised," she muttered to herself, crossing the sidewalk with difficulty. "And he doesn't seem to remember what happened that day either." A boy on a bicycle almost hit her at the last intersection, but apologized in Japanese before continuing on his way. Asia, with a shy smile, just nodded and continued on. "I try not to get distracted." Arriving home, Asia pushed open the door with her foot, balancing her bags. As soon as she entered, the familiar aroma of miso soup and fish enveloped her like a hug. Issei's mother appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a floral apron. "Asia-chan. Welcome. You went to the market alone? How brave." "Ah, yes. I go shopping home," Asia answered with effort, mixing Japanese with hesitant pauses. Mrs. Hayate smiled sweetly as she noticed the effort. "Shall I help you with the bags?" No, I'll give you," Asia said, carefully handing them over. The mother began unpacking the produce while they talked. Suddenly, she frowned when she saw a small tomato inside a single-serve bag. "Asia-chan? How much did this tomato cost you?" Asia hesitated, then took a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. "Eto jan hyaquin. For 400? Mrs. Hayato blinked, then gave a light laugh. 400 yen? That's 4 times more expensive than usual. Asia-chan, they saw you look like a tourist, she said, laughing. Asia lowered her head, embarrassed. I don't know how to say good price cheap. It's okay, don't worry, the woman said, gently stroking her arm. Little by little, you'll learn Japanese. It's hard at first, but you can do it. Even I haggle over the air when I don't have money, she added with a mischievous smile, as if sharing a secret. Asia laughed softly, somewhat relieved. Although words still slipped through her fingers like fish, the warmth of home sustained her. And unbeknownst to her, her Japanese had improved a little more just by trying. However, in his heart, he still had the impatience of the same question. Where is that golden-haired girl? Why didn't she talk to me again, if she said she would? Academy backyard. Issei slumped onto the cement bench, right next to the trees where almost no one passed by at that hour. It was his secret refuge, where the hustle and bustle of classes and Matsuda and Motohama's suspicious questions couldn't reach him. She sighed, letting the wind ruffle her hair. Damn it, I'm living every Japanese teenager's dream, he said softly, looking up at the sky. A pretty, foreign, kind girl under the same roof. He leaned his forehead against his hands, half laughing and half frustrated. And I can't tell anyone, or upload a photo, anything. Because Asia doesn't have papers, she needs to be protected, the authorities might get suspicious, blah blah blah. How long is this going to last? What kind of injustice is this? He remembered that morning. Asia, her apron a little askew, was trying to beat eggs while muttering in Japanese with an Italian accent. His smile when he saw that I had lit the stove correctly. The way she greeted him as if every new day was worth it. That's what I want to brag about, Issei said, calmer now. He looked up at the tallest tree and sighed. I want to tell others that I'm happy, but I can't even explain it. They can't understand if they don't know her. He paused. He collapsed again, defeated. I'm bursting inside. I'm going to get an ulcer from holding it in so much. He paused. The wind blew, moving a branch of the tree above him. I just want one thing, just one. He looked up at the sky, his hands raised dramatically. I want to shout to the world that I live with a girl who is not only hot, but also smiles at me every morning as if I were important. He was silent for a second, then murmured, and he calls me a Saizen with that sweet tone that seems like he's blessing me. A leaf fell on his face. Damn gravity, don't interrupt my suffering. Sigh. How much longer? How much longer do I have to put up with this? He stared up at the clouds, with the expression of a misunderstood victim, and there was only one thing on his mind. I just want to show her off a little, just a little more. From the shadow at a certain distance. He's talking to himself again, Kiba said with an amused smile, his arms crossed as he watched Issei wallow in his dramatic misery. He seems to be losing his mind, Kaneko commented, sitting on a branch higher up, as if she were part of the tree itself. Kiba let out a small laugh. I don't think so, well, maybe a little. But he seems a little frustrated. Frustrated? It must be because of that foreign girl he's living with, Kaneko added in her usual monotone. Kiba tilted his head. How do you know? Kaneko lowered her gaze slightly, revealing that she had been listening to everything. He said every word out loud, even shouted. That boy is beyond help. Oh, right, Kiba laughed again. It's funny. There's something different about him. I don't know if it's his energy, his clumsiness, or that way he tries to hide something he can't hide. That's weird, Kaneko repeated. They both stood in silence for a moment, watching as Issei stood up and walked towards the building like a defeated hero. Do you think Ryosama was right to notice him? Kiba asked, now more serious. Well, what we discovered about your family is something particularly interesting, he replied. Kiba leaned against the same tree with his arms crossed, watching as Issei continued to act strangely, still grumbling incomprehensible things. Kaneko remained silent, and began to eat a fish-shaped cookie filled with chocolate without much enthusiasm. Have you finished reading the report Ryosama gave us? Yes. Everything about that sacred figure who threatened the Baal, Kaneko replied. There's almost no information. No name, no clear face. And the most curious thing, Kiba added, is that after searching through local battle records, sealed libraries, even Demon Clan archives, the only relevant thing we found was one family. The Hayato family. Kaneko nodded slowly. They've lived in this city for over 5,000 years, according to what was observed in the records. They have no magical lineage, no renowned surname, nothing. No fame, no fortune, no connection to the supernatural, at least not apparently. Kiba added, but they survived all the conflicts of those times, the civil wars, even the supernatural conflicts. It's as if an invisible hand protected them so their blood could continue to exist until now. Ryusama believes that hand is related to the holy figure that appeared a few days ago, Kaneko said, her eyes growing colder. Kiba was silent for a moment, then turned to her. Do you think Issei knows? Kaneko shook her head. He has no idea. He can barely hide the fact that he's living with a beautiful foreigner. He knows nothing about the weight of his last name. Kiba sighed with a half smile. So, we have to keep watching him. Not for him exactly, but for his family. Something or someone has protected him for generations, so when they stopped being in his thoughts and continued with his mission. Hey! You're all serious today! Did someone forget to invite me to the long-faced gathering? Someone else appeared before them. Kiba and Kaneko turned quickly. Genshiro Saji, the reincarnated demon and loyal servant of the student council, was approaching with his hands in his pockets and a somewhat forced smile. Sajikan, Kiba greeted politely, but his tone was cautious. Kaneko frowned slightly, sniffing the air as if she could detect the newcomer's intentions. You didn't come here by chance, she said in a low, straightforward voice. Saji stopped a couple of steps before reaching them and shrugged, lowering his tone as well. You're right. My superiors sent me with a message. Kiba raised an eyebrow. Sona and Tsubaki? Saji nodded. Our masters want an immediate meeting. With everyone. What happened in the abandoned church wasn't just an incident involving fallen angels, but there are other issues related to it as well. Kaneko and Kiba exchanged glances. The atmosphere immediately became tense. We understand, we'll go right away, Kiba whispered. We're waiting for you, Saji added. Having given his message, Saji decides to go to the place of calling in a relaxed manner, but mentally he was thinking about a certain boy who was causing him trouble. I'm doing my best to keep them away from him. To keep him out of all this. But if they keep investigating, his gaze slid for a moment to the place where Issei had been minutes before. Hayata, I hope you don't cause me trouble. Student Council Room Ku Academy. The room was filled with a strange tension. Although the lights were dim and the atmosphere clean, the glances exchanged between those present spoke volumes. What happened 5 days ago wasn't a simple supernatural accident. There was something darker at play. At the head of the long table were two prominent figures of the demonic world, Rias Gremory, with her regal bearing and restrained gaze, and Sona Citri, colder and more analytical, with her arms crossed while her servants remained behind her in silence. Sona was the first to speak, her tone firm and straightforward. As everyone knows, the incident at the abandoned church has caught the attention not only of us, but also of some in the underworld, based on what has been reported. My servants were the first to investigate the area, and the report is clear. Saji, Genshiro Saji stepped forward and bowed slightly before speaking. The area was covered by a great residual pressure of holy energy. It wasn't an even fight. Not a single fallen angel remained alive. Added to that, Tsubaki, Sona's queen, chimed in seriously. We found the bodies of all the fallen angels dead. 3 of them had injuries caused by concentrated holy energy. But the most alarming thing was what we found with the group's leader. Sona nodded, giving him the right to continue. Rainier, Tsubaki said. Her body was found decapitated, but not by a sharp weapon. Her head was ripped off, as if it had been torn from its roots. It wasn't a clean cut, but brutal. An execution. Ruriko Nimura, more nervous, intervened. We confirm there are no traces of demonic magic in the remains, only faint traces of what we identify as holy energy. From that, we conclude that no one from our side or others intervened, only the Heaven faction. Sona nodded seriously. In short, this wasn't a simple clash between enemies. It was an execution, a warning. Someone killed Rainier publicly, brutally, and without bothering to hide the remains. At that moment, Saji raised his hand somewhat hesitantly, as if he had been holding back the whole time. Excuse me, President. He glanced briefly at Sona, then at Rias. But perhaps this was a matter between angels and fallen angels. An internal conflict between them. It may not have a direct relationship with us, nor with the House of Gremory. For a moment, It seemed as if his words eased the tension, but the silence that fell was heavier than any scream. Everyone present looked at each other. Kiba frowned. Akino looked down, thoughtful. Even Tsubaki, normally neutral, looked uncomfortable. Kaneko murmured almost like a sigh, "No angel is cruel enough to tear off a head using his bare hands." The words resonated with a disturbing truth. Angels, even in war, were feared for being born warriors, but they were also honorable. What we saw in that church was something else. An act of rage. A warning. From something or someone that didn't fear the consequences. Saji swallowed. I knew they wouldn't believe me that it was just a conflict, he thought, sweat running down his temple. What do I do now? The silence persisted after Saji's comment, dense and full of doubts. It was then that Ria stepped forward, her expression serene, but with a restrained glint of concern in her crimson eyes. With a firm and elegant voice, I don't think we can just assume this was the work of a mere angel either. Not after what also happened to me a few days ago. Everyone turned their attention to her, even Sona, who raised an eyebrow, interested. My familiar, Rias continued. She went to a certain part of the city, a territory that, until then, hadn't shown any irregularities. But she returned soon after, shaken. She told me she was intercepted by a barrier that destroyed one of my leaflets. But what impressed her was the holy figure wrapped in a white, almost blinding light. The room remained silent, expectant, and that being Rias narrowed her eyes, repeating the words slowly, as if she still didn't quite believe what she heard gave her a message. The red-haired demon took a deep breath. No demon with the power of destruction is welcome in my dwelling. Should they set foot in my domain again, I will take the head of the heir of the Bale clan, and exterminate all of his descendants of this generation so that they will never forget whom they have offended. The words floated through the room like blades suspended in the air. Tsubaki lowered her gaze gravely. Sona crossed her arms, her face hard with tension. Saji, for his part, froze. What? A direct threat to the Bale clan? He looked at Rias in bewilderment, then at his companions. Chiesen didn't tell me anything about this that changes the situation if he also messed with the Gremries. But he did not dare to speak. Saji had learned that, in meetings like this, it was sometimes wiser to listen and wait. Though inside he felt the lump in his throat growing, Rias's words fell like a lightning bolt in the middle of the meeting. Kiba was the first of the Gremry clan to speak, his brow furrowed. Threatening the Bale clan is like throwing a dagger into the heart of the underworld. A mere angel wouldn't do that. Even the most ignorant of our race knows that. Akino nodded gently, crossing her arms. And it's not just the tone of the message, but who it was addressed to. The direct heir. He paused briefly, glancing sideways at Rias. This is a declaration of war. Kaneko, from her corner, added in a low but firm voice. No one who knows the weight of that name would dare speak like that unless he could carry out his threat. The tension was palpable. Rias listened to them all with a calm expression, but her fingers were tightly intertwined, as if holding back the pressure inside her. In a corner, Saji was biting his tongue. I should say something they should know it was her, that it was that angel called Chai, but if I do. He visualized Chai's face in his mind, the memory of her bright and serene gaze in the midst of that chaos. If I do, it could cause more problems. Besides, she promised to talk to me after all this, but I haven't seen her again. That's troubling. Sona broke the tense moment with a stifled sigh. I'm sorry I can't provide more information, he said frankly. That day, my 3 servants were knocked unconscious in the church. Something happened just after they detected the conflict, but they didn't see anything. Tsubaki, embarrassed, lowered her head. It was a professional humiliation, and I apologize for that, but even now, I still don't understand. It wasn't a physical blow, nor an obvious magical technique. We just collapsed. All at once. Ruruko, at his side, nodded gravely, as if someone had made us sleep without touching us. Sona frowned even more, as if she had just remembered something important. There's another point I find strange, he said in a measured tone, looking at everyone. During our investigation, we discovered that those fallen angels weren't acting alone. They had a group of renegade humans under their command, exiled from the church. Tsubaki nodded next to her, former exorcists. Some bearing the marks of corruption, others simply forgotten by their church. All of them now fugitives. Sona crossed her arms, clearly displeased. The most worrying thing is that, according to our reports, these individuals are still hiding around the city. Rias spoke without hesitation. We know it too. We've already captured most of them and interrogated several of those vassals, but none of them know who killed Rainier. Apparently, when it happened, they were all outside the church, carrying out minor orders. Aquino intervened gently, but with a dangerous spark in her eyes. Now there is very little left, probably the most dangerous ones. Saji looked to the side, gritting his teeth. He thought, of course they didn't see it, otherwise Chiazan would have killed them too. Sabaki looked down, as if trying to mentally reconstruct the scene. It doesn't make sense. Such a precise, brutal execution, with no one listening or able to escape. It's as if death had descended, done its work, and vanished without a trace. Rias, still looking at Sona, continued, that leaves us with more questions than answers. But the truth is that someone powerful, and with a clear message, acted that day. Sona nodded gravely. For now, let's capture the remaining renegades. Maybe we can get some information. Everyone in the room agreed with this. For his part, Saji couldn't help but think, I feel like I'm playing with fire. At least I have to be more cautious now that everything is escalating. Either. Part 01 Revelations New Age Friends. Either. 3 days have passed since the tense meeting between the Gremry and Citri clans. On the surface, the city had returned to normal, but the atmosphere was filled with an uncomfortable silence, as if something invisible were still moving in the shadows. It was Friday morning. Issei walked down the stairs, his uniform half on, chewing on a badly made piece of toast. I'm leaving. I'm late. He shouted without looking back. Issei, eat slowly. His mother shouted from the kitchen, but it was too late. The door slammed shut. 30 minutes later, as Mrs. Hayato was clearing the table, she noticed the bento still on the shelf. This kid forgot again. She sighed with a mixture of annoyance and tenderness. He's so absent-minded. There was no remedy, was the thought of Issei's mother. Her husband, getting ready for work, muttered, You can't blame him. He's like you when you forget your keys. She threw a rag in his face. Asia, dear, Issei's mother said, would you mind bringing him his lunch? You've been around the academy, haven't you? Asia, who had a cute ponytail hairstyle, helped fold clothes with a sweet expression, nodded with a shy smile. Yes, I can take him. Issei-san, he must be hungry. He said in Japanese with difficulty, Be careful on the streets. And don't cross without looking twice, okay? Asia nodded. She took the small lunch bag in both hands, as if she were carrying something very valuable. However, he still didn't know the ways of the city well. He took a route that seemed familiar, but was actually the longest. Passing by a number of houses, she came to a somewhat lonely park, among trees that were already showing the hues of autumn. Then he felt something strange. The air changed. It wasn't a breeze. It was pressure. A chill ran down his spine. She was about to turn around when a raspy, mocking male voice was heard from a bench behind her. Look what we have here, Rainarican's pet. Asia froze. 3 figures emerged from the shadows of the park. They were young men, but their eyes showed great hostility. A dark aura covered them like a rotten fog. Their clothing was a mixture of old priestly robes and corrupted symbols. You were with her, weren't you? The traitor who abandoned us, said another, shorter one, pulling out a dagger covered in black inscriptions. And now you walk freely through the city, as if nothing had happened. Asia took a step back, clutching her lunch bag tightly. 2 don't want any trouble. But we do! The third roared, running straight toward her, his eyes wide. You'll pay for what you did to Rainaresima. Then it happened. Asia ran, panting hard, the small lunch bag still in her trembling hands. Her legs barely held her up, but fear drove her on. She didn't want to scream. She couldn't. She knew if she did, they could catch her faster. So she just ran. The 3 renegades weren't just following her. They were mocking her. They were hunting her. Come on, you useless nun, one of them laughed. Run faster, make it worth it. Do you think you can hide? This is a game, another added, laughing cruelly. Asia turned a corner of the park, desperate, until she came to a small path that opened onto a nearby forest. I knew it. It was a quiet place, but now it was just a maze of branches and leaves. He walked into it, without thinking, seeking shelter among the tall trees. The renegades followed her from a distance, savoring the moment. He's taking us to the woods, how clumsy. Better for us. They ran and ran after her, laughing. Finally, they reached an exact point, an open field, surrounded by tall trees, where the wind seemed to blow cooler. But when they got there, they noticed something strange. The sun continued to shine over the city, but in that place, the light touched the ground, yet the heat was still felt. It was as if invisible, icy shadows had conquered the day. An unnatural chill suddenly enveloped them, not the kind that chills the skin, but a deeper one that originated in the bones, that seeped into the soul. After feeling that, the 03 realized something. Asia was no longer there. Where did he go? It can't possibly have disappeared. It was just. Soon the air around him became thick. Then the wind blew, not with force, but with a disturbing dryness. It carried no leaves, no dust, only the harsh whistling of emptiness. As if that wind didn't come from the earth, but from beyond. What is this? But the worst part wasn't the wind. It was the feeling. An invisible weight fell upon them, as if a gigantic claw had descended from the sky to press against their chests. Their hearts began to pound, and then, as if something were trying to squeeze them, they felt on the verge of collapse. One of them fell to his knees, unable to understand why he was breathing so hard, and then they felt it. A figure emerged from the trees across the clearing. It didn't run. It didn't fly. It walked, step by step. Calmly. Silently. He wore dark, monastic-style battle clothes. An armor bearing the olive blossom symbol covering his upper body shone as if born from heaven itself. Hair as golden as the sun at dawn, a dark monastic cloak that fluttered in the light wind, and an expressionless but serene face. He was an angel. His mere presence caused the weakest of the renegades to retreat. What is that? An angel? No, that's not a simple angel, the man in the middle muttered, swallowing. That angel was Chai. His ocean blue eyes stared at them with absolute coldness. There was no anger. There was no hatred, just decision. Suddenly, the three renegades, despite the fear that was eating away at them, decided to attack. Their pride, their desperation, or perhaps their foolishness, pushed them to attack her. Chai didn't say a single word, not a single warning, not a threat. Only his eyes, immutable, observed them with a judgment colder than death. The first one, the one in the center, roared as it launched itself straight at her. But Chai moved like lightning. Before her scream ended, she was already in front of him. With one hand, he took him by the head, not with rage, with calculated force, but with sacred brutality. He slammed his skull into the ground with a violence that knocked the renegade out. Crack! The body was left lying unconscious. The second barely had time to blink before Chai spun around and faced him. He raised his fist to attack her, but suddenly received a devastating headbutt directly to the forehead. A muffled crunch, blood gushing from his nose, and the second renegade's stumbling body fell limply onto the grass. The third was the quickest. He pulled out a silver dagger and, screaming with all the fear he had left, tried to stab her in the back. But when his blade descended, Chai was no longer there. In a blink of an eye, he appeared behind her. His movements were so perfect they seemed unreal. He took her arm with surgical coldness and bent it at the opposite angle with a chilling snap. Crack! The third's cry of pain was cut off as he fell backward, unconscious from the shock. Chai looked at the three of them, one by one. They were breathing, but barely. Unconscious. Humiliated. Alive by choice, not by merit. Then, finally, he spoke. A single sentence, in a voice as calm and sharp as ice. Men of little worth. There was no anger in her. I just felt sorry for those men. Asia had run so much that her legs felt like lead. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath came in ragged gasps as she leaned against a tree, trying to recover. The footsteps of her pursuers were no longer audible, nor were their voices or their presence, only a silence of peace. Looking up, Asia blinked in confusion. What lay before her seemed like something straight out of Holy Scripture, from stories she had once read as a child with the innocent hope that they were real. An impossible paradise stretched out before her, a rolling emerald meadow, with flowers so perfect they seemed sculpted by angels. They weren't just beautiful, but radiated a living essence, as if each petal breathed with the rhythm of the world. There were lilies that shone with moonlight reflections, poppies a serene red, and hyacinths whose scent stirred memories Asia hadn't known she had. There were other plants too, but they were unknown to Asia, as it was the first time she had seen those kinds of flowers. The air was different. It wasn't cold or warm. It was just right. The kind of climate that could only exist in a place where sin and suffering hadn't left their mark. The wind didn't blow, it danced, with a sacred delicacy that made the grass gently ripple and caressed Asia's face as if heaven itself were touching her. And then he saw the impossible. In the shade of a fruit tree, a white-furred wolf rested peacefully, while a small deer lay beside it, fearless. Further away, shark-clawed birds flew through the skies in harmony with small creatures, not hunting them. A golden-eyed panther drank water next to a capybara. There was no fear. There was no predatory instinct, only peace. This isn't normal, Asia whispered in a broken voice, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Was he dreaming? Had he died without realizing it? Asia fell to her knees, unable to speak. It was beauty. It was purity. It was something lost. Am I in the Garden of Eden? He murmured to the sky, his voice trembling. It was the only place that could explain so much beauty, so much purity, so much harmony. A place where sin had never touched the earth. Where death was unnecessary. Where creation breathed as one, without wounds or scars. Then, a voice as soft as spring interrupted that moment. Don't worry, I already took care of those men. Turning around, he saw the figure of that woman with golden hair and deep eyes, dressed in dark clothes, but with a presence that radiated light and firmness. The wind played with her hair as if it recognized her as its queen. It was Chai, not as a warrior this time, but as a sacred protector. Asia stared at her, her eyes wide open. It was impossible not to remember her. A smile spread across his face. Chiazin, she whispered, excited. The woman nodded with a tender look, and said simply, "Welcome to my home." And at that moment, Asia understood something. That place, so perfect, so eternal. It wasn't the biblical Eden. It was a refuge, the home of that celestial being, a piece of the world that had not yet been corrupted. So Chai, I invite you to chat. Chai walked slowly through the field. He approached one of the old world fruit trees and gently raised his hand. The tree, as if recognizing her, gently dropped one of its fruits into her palm. He returned to Asia, who remained seated with wide eyes, admiring every detail of the living paradise that surrounded her. She still didn't dare move too much, as if any sudden action could shatter that fragile dream. But then something brushed against her leg. She looked down and found a plump, furry creature staring at her with calm, shining eyes like clear water. It was a capybara. Huh! Asia exclaimed, softly surprised, but not afraid. The capybara came closer, sniffing curiously. Then, as if having made a profound decision, it sat down beside her, confidently resting some of its weight on Asia's leg. Chai let out a soft laugh from where she sat. His name is Rocco. He's my favorite, and I think he likes you. After that, Chai approached Asia and sat next to her. Here, Chai said softly, offering her the fruit. There's no danger here. You can relax. Asia took it carefully, as if holding something sacred. The scent was sweet and deep, impossible to describe. She looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and a little embarrassment. I thought that I'd never see you again. It's been several days since you told me we'd meet. Chai smiled and sat down opposite her, with the calmness of someone in no hurry. Patience is a virtue. And you, being a former nun, should know that. Asia ducked her head with a shy smile. Sorry, you're right. Don't apologize so much. Relax. I'm not your superior, Chai joked, letting out a light laugh that made the flowers around him bow as if in acknowledgement of his joy. Asia couldn't help but laugh, too, more calmly. She began to bite into the fruit, and its flavor was so perfect, so delicately balanced, that for a moment she felt tears pricking her eyes. What is this place? He finally asked, swallowing gently. Is it really Eden? Chai looked at the clear sky, then looked at her gently. Not exactly. But you could say this is what this place looked like thousands of years ago. This place is my home, a refuge I've protected over time. No one can enter without my permission. Asia blinked, her face growing more and more astonished. So you're an angel? Chai nodded gently, but then clarified. Exactly, although not like the others. I don't have a halo. And my wings. She sat up and stepped back, letting her cloak slip lightly over her shoulders. From her back emerged two large, soft wings, white as freshly fallen snow, but different. Fluffier, not formed of the thin, fine feathers of traditional angels. These wings seemed to be made of sacred light, warm, enveloping, alive. Asia couldn't help but cover her mouth. They are beautiful. I've never seen anything like that. Thank you. Chai smiled, like someone who's been proudly embracing his oddness for years. I'm not like the angels in heaven. That's why I don't always fit in, but that's okay. Asia slowly lowered her hands and placed the fruit near the capybara. He still couldn't believe it. Years of praying to God, years of service, and he never imagined he'd see a real angel with his own eyes. Chai allowed her to enter such a special place, offered her delicious fruit, made her laugh, and looked at her with sincere tenderness. Can I ask you a lot of questions? Asia said, somewhat embarrassed. I have so many. Chai settled back, crossing her legs, relaxed. I know, that's why you're here. But first, relax and eat. Then Asia, remembering the fruit, turned to take it again, but her hand only touched the air. Hey! She looked around, bewildered. The fruit had disappeared. It was then that she heard a soft sound, a yum yum yum, right next to her. She turned her head slowly, and there was Rocco, happily chewing, his cheeks puffed out, the fruit's golden juice dripping from the sides of his mouth. Huh! Rocco-san. The capybara stood still for a second, as if it knew it had been discovered, and then it slowly accelerated, walking with a clumsy but determined gait toward a nearby bush, as if that would make it invisible. No wonder he approached me, Asia exclaimed in surprise, but also unable to stop herself from laughing as she watched him disappear into the flowers as slowly as possible. You're so naughty! Chai, who had been watching the scene, let out a slight but hearty laugh. He's a glutton. He never passes up a heavenly morsel. Asia puffed out her cheeks, pretending to be annoyed, though her eyes were full of tenderness. And I thought sacred animals were more respectful. They both laughed together, and the ice between them broke completely. Chai walked over and plucked another fruit from the nearest tree, handing it directly to Asia. Here you go. This one's even sweeter. Are you sure Rocco-san won't steal it again? I don't think so. Now he knows you won't make it so easy for him this time, Chai joked with a smile. Asia took the fruit in her hands, giggling like a child, while Rocco peeked his head out from the bush, watching and evaluating. House of the Hayadu. The house was quiet, but Miki Hayadu was starting to feel uneasy. It had been over an hour since Asia had left to deliver Issei's lunch, and there was no sign of her. Where has that little girl gone? He muttered as he picked up a cup from the sink. I hope she's not lost. He looked up at the kitchen window, hoping to see a familiar figure outside. But he didn't see Asia. Instead, a movement caught his attention. Hey! On the street in front of her house, 2 moving trucks were parked. Several people were beginning to unload boxes, furniture, and a large cage covered with a dark blanket. Some curious neighbors were already approaching to watch. Looks like we're going to have new neighbors, Mickey commented, drying her hands on her apron. He peered further out the window, and among the workers, he spotted a capped female figure giving directions. Her clothing was sober and elegant, and her long golden hair blew gently in the wind. She wasn't Japanese, that was obvious. Wow, Mickey murmured, crossing her arms. That young lady is so pretty. Besides, she looks very young. Suddenly, the figure in question turned his head. For a second, his eyes met Mickey's through the window, although the distance was considerable. Mickey felt a little embarrassed about making eye contact. That woman radiated a calm and tranquil aura. At least that was what her beautiful blue eyes could give off. Before she could think further, the woman gave her a slight nod, almost a polite bow. Mickey, a little embarrassed, responded with a similar gesture from the window. She must be a foreigner, she said in a low, calmer voice. Then, an idea crossed his mind. What if Asia stumbled upon this move and is helping out? I don't think so, though. She doesn't know anyone else around here. She sighed, a little worried. I'd better wait a little longer. But if she doesn't come back in another hour, I'll go out and look for her. Moving trucks unloaded steadily as the sun shone over the neighborhood. Amidst it all, one woman stood out not only for her beautiful figure, but also for her personality. She had long, golden hair that shone in the sunlight, and blue eyes as deep as the summer sky. She wore an outfit like a regular worker and a cap that covered her head, but she still drew attention. She gracefully turned on her heels, looking out at the neighborhood with a smile full of innocent joy. Such fresh air. What a lovely place to live, he murmured with childlike enthusiasm. One of the workers walked past him, carrying a huge box of books. "Where do you want us to put this, Gabrielsima?" Gabriel pointed to the door with a theatrical bow and an extended finger. "Over there, please. Where the sun touches the ground. Those books like to be read in the sunlight." That man, who was really an angel in disguise, obeyed Gabriel. Meanwhile, Gabriel turned his attention to the neighboring house, where Mickey Hayata continued to watch curiously from the kitchen window, somewhat confused by the radiant figure that had settled so close. Gabriel tilted his head and murmured, with a bright smile, "Oh, they're looking at me. How sweet. Humans are always so curious." Gabriel then politely returned the greeting. Issei's mother looked a little embarrassed, but smiled back. "It's going to be a lot of fun living here," Gabriel said, clasping his hands behind his back and skipping a few times toward his new door. In the heart of the sacred forest, in the middle of the eternal meadow, the wind danced gently through the ancient flowers as Asia sat on a moss-covered rock, her hands clasped in her lap. Facing her, Chai, in his dark armor and cloak that seemed to absorb the light, maintained a serene expression, but in his eyes lay something that Asia, with her sensitive heart, instantly noticed a very ancient sadness. "So Hayata Issei?" Asia spoke in a low voice, as if afraid of shattering the beauty of the place with her words. "Was he a warrior in service to God?" Chai nodded gently, looking up at the amber sky that stretched over her Eden. "It was," he replied with a soft sigh. "Many millennia ago, when the faction war was at its most chaotic, he was there. He was blessed with a unique holy power, the power of miracles." Asia looked up, her eyes wide, confused at first, but her face soon lit up with pure, almost reverent wonder. "The power of miracles?" Chaya nodded gently. "You saw him, Asia. That day in the abandoned church. When all seemed lost, he saved you, right?" Asia's lips trembled slightly as she recalled that moment. Her body was cold, her soul fragmented, and darkness enveloped her until that light touched her. She put a hand to her chest as she remembered that moment. "A warm light descended and enveloped me. It gave me back my life, my soul, and my heart. What you felt was real. It was the miracle manifesting through him," Chaya said, tenderness in her eyes. Asia swallowed, looking down. "And did you know him before?" It took Chaya a few seconds to respond. His voice, when he finally spoke, was lower, tinged with nostalgia. "Yes," Chaya murmured, her gaze lost in the sky. "I met him 15,000 years ago, when I was the weakest of my race. At that time, he had a different name, and a different form." "Another name?" Asia whispered, almost not wanting to interrupt her. Chaya nodded slowly, a soft melancholy in his oceanic eyes. "When he saw me and treated me like no one else had, it was the first time anyone hadn't treated me like a flaw or a mistake. He looked at me tenderly, protecting me without asking anything. He saved my life, Asia. Not just my body, but my heart too, and you fell in love." Asia concluded sweetly. "He made me feel like I didn't have to be perfect," Chaya said, with a small, brittle smile. "That even broken things could have value. He gave my existence meaning." But then, her voice turned into a more pained whisper. "But 1,000 years ago, I lost him. I thought I'd never see those eyes again, that awkward smile, that warmth." His oceanic eyes then rested on Asia. Although his expression was serene, a profound truth shone in his gaze, like a flame that refused to go out. "But I found it. And I don't plan on losing it again." Asia stared at her in silence for a few seconds. She not only understood the words, she felt the weight they carried. Chai's love for Issei was real, immense, but it was also tinged with a subtle fear of failing, of losing him again, of the world, heaven, hell, any enemy tearing him away again. Asia leaned forward slightly, gently taking Chai's hand. "You won't do it alone," she said with unexpected firmness. "I want to protect him too." Chai blinked and then looked at Asia, who said to him, "That day he also saved my life, even though I was doing evil against him that day. I owe you a debt of gratitude, but above all, I want to repay the trust you just placed in me." Asia gently squeezed the hand she was holding. "I know I'm not worthy of serving heaven again, but I still want to help you." "Thank you," he finally said, his voice cracking slightly, as if an invisible burden had been lifted inside him. And then, he remembered, a similar field, a time long gone. A young woman with a lively smile, her brown hair tied back in a messy braid. A loyal friend who laughed with her through it all. She was her old friend Cocoa. I knew I could trust you, he murmured with suppressed emotion. Seeing you, Asia, felt like I was seeing my old friend Cocoa. And I was definitely right. Asia opened her eyes in surprise. Chaya looked down, with a melancholic smile. She died several millennia ago. A peaceful death, after having lived a long and full life. I always remember her. Your soul, your light, it feels so similar. It's as if heaven has returned her to me, somehow. Asia didn't know what to say. She just smiled, and this time she was the one who squeezed Chaya's hand tighter. Then I will live up to your trust. I know. Chaya nodded gently. From now on you'll walk with us. Then Chaya looked at her with a serene but serious expression. So if you're going to walk with me through this, let me give you something in return. A token of my gratitude. Asia shook her head with a shy smile, narrowing her eyes. No need. I'm not doing this for reward, Chai. I know, Chai interrupted gently, still holding the sacred serenity in her gaze. That's why I want to do it. Because you don't expect it. Because your heart doesn't ask for it. That's why I'll give you something no human possesses. Asia blinked in confusion. Something that no one else has? Chai nodded and slowly sat up, surrounded by the warm aura of the unique place that surrounded them. I want to give you back the gift of all the languages of the world. Asia opened her eyes in surprise. Huh? What do you mean? Thousands of years ago, Chai said softly, as if telling a sacred story. A king named Nimrod defied the Almighty. He wanted to touch the heavens with his own hands, to build a tower that would equal the kingdom of God. His pride was great, and as punishment, God divided the languages of men. The brothers no longer understood each other. Humanity dispersed, and with it, confusion was born. Such was the curse of Babel. Asia nodded slowly, remembering that story she had read many times in sacred texts. Yes, I know it. The Tower of Babel. Well, today? Chai took a step toward her, a faint white glow at the tips of his fingers. I'm going to undo that curse, at least for you. Asia stepped back a little, somewhat hesitant at the unusual nature of the proposal. Huh? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Just trust me. Chai's voice was firm, but also maternal. Stick out your tongue. That? Tongue. Stick it out. Asia, blushing and bewildered, obeyed with some embarrassment, sticking out her tongue slowly as if she felt ridiculous. Chai smiled tenderly and raised 2 fingers on his right hand. Then, gently, he held Asia's tongue between his index finger and thumb, closing his eyes as he recited an ancient prayer in a language Asia couldn't recognize. A soft white light enveloped Chai's hand, and then the pain came. Asia felt a burning pang that shot from her tongue to her skull, as if a sacred fire were rewriting something in her soul. She closed her eyes tightly, holding back a moan. Chaya. It hurts so much. For a moment, Asia thought Chai had cut her tongue. That maybe it was a mistake, or that she wasn't ready. But then, the pain stopped. Suddenly. As if it had never been there. Asia staggered a little, breathing heavily. And then, without thinking, he exclaimed, Watashi wa, he said in Japanese. Asia blinked, confused. I can speak, he said now in English. It's wonderful I speak French? She said immediately, this time surprised by the perfect accent. She covered her mouth with both hands, shocked. Two's thighs real? Chai smiled, slowly lowering his hand and closing his eyes in satisfaction. Your tongue is no longer bound by Babel. Now you can speak to anyone anywhere. Without barriers. Without borders. You can understand any language, even its writing, no matter if that language has been extinct for thousands of years. As in the beginning, before human pride caused separation, you have the ability to speak the universal language. Asia, still in disbelief, looked at her own hands and then at Chai. The capybara, curious, approached to sniff her. Speaking all the languages. Asia whispered, trembling with emotion, as if she still couldn't believe what had happened. Her heart was pounding, filled with a joy and gratitude that she couldn't find words to express. But then a soft plop interrupted the moment. Hey! Asia looked down just in time to see Chai suddenly fall to the stone floor, holding her head in both hands. Her once radiant face was now pale, and her shoulders were shaking as if something had suddenly drained her of all her energy. Chai? Asia exclaimed, alarmed, running to his side. Before she could even touch her, she noticed something that stopped her in her tracks. A thin trickle of blood ran from Chai's nose, forming a scarlet line on her cheek. Why are you bleeding? What's wrong with you? Asia tried to find something to clean the blood, but she couldn't find anything to help her. Chai closed his eyes with a tired smile, tilting his head to one side. I'm fine, just a little dizzy. She let out a low laugh that didn't hide the exhaustion in her voice. How are you going to be okay? You're bleeding from your nose. Asia knelt in front of her, visibly worried. Chai let out a soft sigh and opened her eyes again, blue as the ocean, although dull from wear. I'm not God, Asia. To undo a curse as powerful as Babel's, I had to give something equivalent in return. An offering. Asia swallowed. What did you give? Time. Chai smiled sweetly, wiping the blood from her nose with the back of her hand. I gave up 500 years of my life. 500 years? Asia brought a hand to her chest, horrified. Chai nodded gently. Yes, but don't worry so much, he added, forcing a more cheerful smile to reassure her. 500 years is nothing to someone like me who's lived for millennia. Asia lowered her gaze, deeply moved by those words. She felt her heart burn, not from sadness, but from a resolve that was taking hold within her even more strongly. I promise I won't waste this gift. I know. Chai nodded, gently sinking back into the cool grass, as if the sky itself had embraced her. That's why I gave it to you. Asia remained silently by her side, while the capybara approached calmly, lying down next to them both, as if it too understood that something important had happened. Asia finally returned home. The sun was beginning to set, dyeing the sky orange, and the evening breeze caressed the flowers in the small garden in front of the Hyder residence. As soon as she opened the door, Mickey's worried voice immediately greeted her. Asia-chan! Issei's mother exclaimed, coming out of the kitchen with her apron still on. I was so worried. You were gone for hours. Are you okay? Asia gave a slight bow, lowering her head in guilt. Forgive me, Issei's mom. I went off course and took the long way around. I didn't mean to worry you. Mickey crossed her arms, frowning. But before I could scold her, her eyes widened a little in surprise. Hey, you're speaking Japanese? And very naturally, Asia blinked. Oh? Oh yes. I'm learning from the best. She smiled softly, remembering Chai fondly. That simple comment melted Mickey, who burst into a joyful laugh and hugged Asia tightly, showering her with maternal affection. You're such a sweetheart, Asia-chan. Issei is so lucky to have you around. Asia, although somewhat embarrassed, returned the hug. It was warm, familiar, and after what she'd experienced today, she felt more connected than ever. But then Mickey pulled away a little and asked, By the way, did you give Issei his lunch? Asia went blank. His eyes slowly opened. The smile on his face froze. An awkward silence fell over the room. Don't tell me that. Too lost it, Asia muttered, a drop of sweat running down her temple. Far from the Hayada house, in the sacred chai garden, under the shade of a tree laden with glistening fruit, a capybara happily munched a lovingly wrapped bento box. Its teeth crunched the rice into a heart shape, while soft, contented noises escaped its snout. On one side of the capybara, the wrapper had written in red marker to Issei, with love. The capybara, completely unaware of its culinary crime, let out a soft moo as it swallowed the last bit. That day Hayada Issei was left hungry, either, 'cause city in the middle of the night. Night had fallen over the city, and the nearby forest was filled with deep shadows between the tall trees and the faint creaking of branches dancing in the wind. Saji walked silently along the hidden path, his jacket loose and the tracking sensors on his communicator active. His breathing was more labored than usual. "Tsky right here," he muttered, remembering what Rias had said. My familiar encountered an unusual presence. Right around a part of the forest that doesn't seem to be uneven. Saji didn't know why, but his intuition told him there was something else, something beyond that he had to find out. The forest was dense, but suddenly, a presence made him stop. What the? Saji narrowed his eyes, his gaze falling on an unexpected scene. There, right at the foot of a hill, 3 of the renegades they'd been searching for days lay on the ground. Gagged. Beaten. Unable to get up. What the hell? Saji ran toward them on instinct, his energy starting to activate in combat reflex, fearing an ambush. But then, he felt it, a pure energy. Warm. Like a sacred breath. Saji turned sharply to his right and saw her. A few steps away, among the trees silvered by the moonlight, stood Chai. Her silhouette stood out among the shadows, her long golden hair gently blowing in the wind. She wore her dark, almost monastic cloak, which contrasted with the whiteness of her skin. Chai walked slowly toward him. Her steps were so soft that not even the leaves crunched beneath her feet, and then he smiled, a calm smile, as if nothing in the world could disturb it. "It's so nice to see you again," she said in a soft, almost sing-song voice. Saji was stunned. His instincts screamed at him that this woman wasn't ordinary. But at the same time, he didn't feel any danger. Her power was overwhelming, but not threatening. Like standing in front of a storm that hasn't yet decided whether it will fall or not. Usagi slowly lowered his fighting stance. "Did you do this?" Chai looked at the unconscious renegades, then turned his gaze to Saji. "Yes, but I didn't know what to do with them, so I beat him up again. Now I'm thinking about what to do with them." Saji swallowed. "Who are you really?" Chai didn't respond immediately. He took another step closer, his eyes shining like the pre-dawn sky. "I'm a friend." She looked at him gently. "Come on, we still have a conversation to talk about." The night wind blew gently through the trees as Saji and Chai climbed the last slope of the forest. Upon reaching the top, a majestic vista opened up before them. The city slept beneath a clear sky, its lights flickering like fireflies caught in a web of concrete and life. Saji stood silently beside Chaya. He had followed her there on intuition and something else. He couldn't say what exactly drove him, but now, in the presence of that young woman with a serene aura, he felt a mixture of respect, uncertainty, and a strange calm. He watched her out of the corner of his eye. Her golden hair moved gently in the breeze, and her moonlit silhouette had something unreal about it. She didn't seem dangerous, nor cruel, and yet she had effortlessly immobilized 3 renegades. That couldn't be overlooked. "You're very beautiful," Saji thought as he looked closely at Chai. "You don't seem like someone who's heartless." Chai just watched everything, quickly said to Saji. "Do you like the city?" she asked suddenly, without taking her eyes off the landscape. Saji nodded after a pause. "Yes. I've always liked watching her from here. She seems calm. Even though she never really is." Chai smiled slightly, as if that answer awakened a distant memory. "I like it too." His tone was nostalgic. "Maybe because I lived here 15,000 years ago." Saji turned his face towards her, surprised. What? When there were no houses or buildings, much less artificial lights, Chai continued. This place was all forest and stone. Humans didn't yet know how to build lasting homes. They came with their families looking for shelter, a river, some fertile land. And I, lived with them, without them knowing I was an angel. Saji didn't say anything. He just listened, trapped in the night, to the murmur of the wind and the woman's calm voice. Chai looked down for a few seconds, and murmured with a barely perceptible smile. "Back then, when this place was still young," Chai began, an ancient sweetness in his voice, "I met many people. Some passed like the wind. But 3 of them left a mark on my heart that never faded." Saji slowly turned his face towards her, without interrupting. There was something about the way Chai pronounced each word as if he were speaking from somewhere deep inside. "Cocoa," she said with a faint smile. "A human girl. My first true friend. With a heart as pure as an animal's. She was the kind of person who makes you laugh even when everything is in ruins. She always said I was clumsy. That I had to learn to do things for myself." Saji nodded, intrigued. He didn't know why, but the name sounded vaguely familiar. "Then there was Mamoru," Chai continued. "My best friend. He was like a brother to me. He taught me a lot, but he was also reliable and very kind. He never left me alone when I messed up, and when no one believed in me, he did. I definitely miss them both." Saji continued to stare at Chai in silence, processing the depth of her words. But something inside him stirred at the sound of that name Mamoru, so he murmured, lowering his gaze slightly. "The reason you approached me was just because I look like your old friend?" Chai turned her face slightly towards him, her expression serene. "Yes," he replied bluntly. At first it was just that, but I couldn't help it. When I saw you, something in me clicked. It was as if the past whispered to me to talk, not to fight with you. Saji gave a short, somewhat ironic laugh, crossing his arms as he looked at her out of the corner of his eye. That's quite a way to act, huh? That's not how you do things. His voice had a mocking quality. I'm a reincarnated demon, in case you didn't know. In your day, that was synonymous with mortal enemy, wasn't it? Chaya smiled, not denying it. Angels and demons are still mortal enemies these days. He nodded gently. But when I saw you, I remembered Mamoru, and I just couldn't reach out. I felt like I needed to talk to you, and now I know for sure. I wasn't wrong. Saji narrowed his eyes. Because I know you're a good person, Saji. Despite who you are now, you have a kind heart. No demonic contract can erase that. He didn't know what to say right away. His mocking smile faded for a moment, and he stared at the city below him. Then he sighed with a slight shrug. I guess that's better than having a light spear thrown at me. Chaya laughed softly, but then Saji asked him, You said you had 03 important people, but you only mentioned 02. Who is that other person? At this, Chaya paused briefly. Then his eyes deepened, almost crystalline in the moonlight. Yes, the other person, it's Issei. The name hung in the air, and Saji felt a chill run down his spine. Issei? Hayate Issei? He asked, puzzled. Chaya nodded, a soft sadness on his face. Yes. I met him when I was the weakest of my kind. An insignificant creature, born of God's compassion. Back then, I had another name. When I met him, my world changed. He treated me like no one else had ever treated me before. He gave me a place in the world. I wasn't perfect, but he made me feel unique. He was the love of my life. Saji didn't know what to say. His mind was trying to process everything. An angel named Chai, his story, and that name that now weighed more than ever. But how is that possible? Is that Issei the same one we know now? He was reborn, she replied calmly. I lost him 1,000 years ago in a very tragic way. But now, I've found him in this time. And I won't allow myself to lose him again. Chaya looked back at the city. But this time, her oceanic eyes shone with a silent longing, as if searching for someone among the distant lights. The night wind gently moved her golden hair, as if the sky itself heard her silent prayer. Saji watched in silence. The intensity in her words resonated deeply with him. Issei, he muttered, more to himself than to her. He must be someone really special. He is, Chaya spoke again, without taking his eyes off the city. But what many don't understand is that he's also dangerous. Not because of what he wants to do, but because of what he's unfortunately burdened with. Saji frowned. What are you talking about? Issei wields two powers that, as soon as they are known, may be coveted by the other factions, among which are the demons. One is known to you, the sacred gear, the boosted gear, the one that contains the soul of the Red Dragon Emperor. Drake? Yes. But I temporarily sealed that power myself. Saji's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could interrupt, Chai continued, the other, an older, purer, and more feared power. It is the power of miracles, something no other being possesses. An energy that transcends logic and is something that was born only after a great power split in two. Saji felt a chill run down his spine. The power of miracles? Chai nodded slowly, turning to face him, her expression more solemn. Thousands of years ago, Issei had acquired a unique sacred power, but all of that happened to save my life. As a result, that unique power was split in two, because to save my life, part of that power now rests within me. The sacred power I have is the power of creation. Both forces are fearsome in the hands of those who wield them, which is why I am afraid that some evil or ambitious being would want to use Issei just to have access to that power. I know that there are beings who will kill, destroy, or anything to obtain it. Saji swallowed. That extraordinary power. No doubt some demons would covet it. Chai looked down for a moment. Exactly. My intention isn't to start a fight, but like I told you that time, I won't show mercy to anyone if they decide to go after Issei to use him. Saji remained silent, processing everything. Now he understood why she was so determined to protect him. And what are you going to do if they approach him? Chai looked up. His gaze was no longer melancholy or gentle, it was cold, sharp, and determined. "I'll kill anyone," he said without hesitation, his voice low but filled with fierce determination. "I don't care about their rank, their title, or their blood. If they touch issei, I'll tear them to pieces." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the wind seemed to stop for a moment. Saji held his breath. He wasn't surprised by the force of those words, but he was surprised by the firmness with which they were spoken. That woman in front of him, who just a few minutes ago had seemed to look at the city with nostalgia and sweetness, was now a force ready to destroy everything. And then, suddenly, he understood. "So," he said cautiously, recalling a recent conversation with WeloveGB, "it was you. You're the one who threatened the Bale clan heirs a few days ago." Chai's eyes widened slightly. It was a subtle gesture, but enough to give her away. "How do you know that?" she asked, genuinely surprised. Saji crossed his arms, leaning against a nearby tree. When WeloveGB's familiar returned from the forest, she began investigating herself. The only clue was a figure shrouded in light that threatened the Bale clan demons. Someone with such an overwhelming and terrifying presence. Chai looked away, not denying it. His silence was confirmation enough. "I wasn't looking for violence that night, but they dared to get too close. When I sensed the Bale's power, I felt I had to confront them. I can't help it, it's in my nature." Saji remained silent for a few more seconds. Then, with a sigh that was both resigned and curious, he dared to speak. "So I can see why the Bale clan makes you so uncomfortable," he said cautiously. "Is it because of the power of destruction?" Chai lowered his gaze slightly, his expression more somber. "Yes," he replied in a low but firm voice. "Thousands of years ago, I saw with my own eyes what that power can do. I had several fights with that demonic clan, nearly losing my life many times. All in all, the Bale demons are monstrous. Since then, the power of destruction and I are destined to clash. I was born with the power of creation, and they with the power to erase everything in their path. Our very existence opposes it." Saji watched her closely. Chai's tone wasn't one of irrational hatred, but rather that of someone who had experienced pain firsthand. "So," he said carefully, "the threat WeloveGB received was that why?" Chai frowned slightly. Rias is part of the Gremry clan, yes, but her mother is a Bale. That's why her power is considered special. She has within her the talented bloodline of the power of destruction." For the first time, Chai showed a hint of bewilderment. "I didn't know that," he admitted frankly. "I've never had a conflict with the Gremry clan. And I have nothing against that girl in particular." But her gaze didn't change. It remained serious, firm, and resolute. "But if she has Bale blood, and she decides to use it to get close to issei with evil intentions, then I won't hesitate to confront her. No matter her last name. No matter her lineage. If she's an enemy, then I'll eliminate her."